Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптям посорбати довбані щі, та трохи в ущах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Зі сходу припхались до нас барани, для восстановлення великої страни, найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, доводи, всяке озброєння, різне, ракети, потужні машини залізні. У нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, і ми зачаїли на орків образу. З бандитів російських робить примар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, на вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто ж винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає їх цар.
I don't know. So, we'll see how that goes. Oh, Russia has gone full invasion now? I'm gonna Google that real quick. Putin announces a military operation in Ukraine as the UN Security Council pleads with him to pull back. This is from the New York Times. I have a friend over there named Vlad. I won't give his last name, but hopefully he's all right. He lives somewhere, I believe, in between Kiev and Kharkov. So, Kharkiv, I believe. I'm not really sure how it's pronounced. It's either Kharkov or Kharkiv. So, hopefully nothing happens to him because he's a cool dude and he's a very nice friend. But damn, wow, that's crazy. So with that being said, I'm gonna end this stream right here. Hang out if you're watching right now. Hang out for about 5 minutes, and I'll have a new stream up, and I'll be playing a different game, more war related, and I'll be talking about what's happening in Ukraine. I may even just stay on Google Maps, and we'll talk about it there or something. Hey, what's up, everyone? It is the Enforcer, and we are back with the new stream. If you're from the last one, welcome back. Right now, I've changed the topic of the stream and everything because we have to talk about what is going on in Ukraine, because at the moment they're being invaded. And so if you're here for the first time, I will recap a little bit as to what I know is going on, and if you have any questions, comments, or want to have a discussion about anything, just let me know in the chat. Let me go hop over to the chat real quick so that way I can get on that. make sure that I can see what y'all are saying. This stream is going to be the one that goes all night. Who cares about the 100 subs? We are here to talk entirely about what's going on over there, because that's wild. Alright, so at the moment, well, we'll start at the beginning. Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
Hello everybody, and welcome to day 100 of the stream.
And today we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine, and we have finally reached day 100. The war has been going on for 100 straight days, and we can see that the Ukrainians are still holding their ground, and it's been quite a journey for me, y'all, Matthew, and everyone else who's been on this stream. Of course, the channel started at humble beginnings. The intro actually was the stream where I found out that Russia was invading Ukraine, and then the intro of the stream right afterwards. I hope a lot of y'all enjoyed that. That was kind of a cool look at what I was doing 100 days ago. And from there, I went from 87 subscribers to we're now over 68,000. We've reported pretty much on every single day of the war except for Mondays since 2 months ago. But we have literally covered every single hour of this war as long as this war has been going, and we'll continue to do that until this war ends. And so, with that in mind, I have to say that while it's been a journey for Ukraine, I know it's been a massive journey for the Leaf Spring Army. We've all been here since the start, and after starting off on that stream, actually playing War Thunder on stream of all things, went from doing that to now we've raised nearly $300,000 in support for Ukraine. And when you think about everything that this channel has become over this amount of time, it's honestly incredible. And I've got to say, I'm more than honored to be the one reporting this news, and also more than honored to have all of y'all watching these streams. And so I thank you all so much once again. And without further ado, we're going to make our usual announcements before we get to the actual schedule for tonight. Starting off, we still do have the limited edition We Want You for the Leaf Spring Army merch up on the store. It will be going down tomorrow, so make sure to get some while you can, and make sure to show your support for the channel, and also let others know about the Enforcer channel as well, which a great way to do that is through the shirt. Also, another thing that I'd like to say is that we will be, of course, covering a decent amount of stuff about, I guess you could say, how day 100 is really retrospective today. We'll be talking about how the first days of the war went by and large, so I just want y'all to know that before we go into the news tonight, because while of course we're going to be talking about the major news that's happened, we're also going to be looking 100 days back in the past when this thing had just started off. So with that, let's now get to the schedule for tonight's news. First, we're going to start off in the area around Kiev. We've gotten a decent amount of news here today, and also it looks like Zelensky, too, has traveled back to the past on the very first or second day, really, of this war, and he's shown us that he did the exact same thing today, which was really interesting and very eerie to watch in a way. After we cover the Kiev news, we're then going to move to the location unknowns, and we're going to cover all the location unknowns. Then we're going to move into Russia, but before we move into Russia, we're going to answer 3 questions from the chat. We'll then move into Russia and cover the Russian news. I think there's only one bit. There is. We'll then move on into the Kharkiv area and also cover all of the northern Donbass news. After that, we're then going to start moving down to the Donetsk region, but before we do that, we're once again going to answer 3 questions from the chat, and once we answer those 3 questions, we'll then cover the remainder of the news in the southern front, and we'll also go and cover the international news here in the United States. Then we will finally return back to Kiev and cover President Zelensky's speech that he made today on the 100th day of the war. And so, it's been a journey for all of us, and it still will be a journey for quite some time afterwards. No one knows when this war will end, but I have to say that the Ukrainians have done nothing but impress the entire world and show that Ukraine is actually a country and not just some massive land in the middle of Europe. So starting off in the area around the Kiev Sea today, we've actually seen that the Russians are getting a brand new helicopter, plus or minus a few parts. We can see that the Ukrainians pulled an Mi-35 out of the Kiev Sea, which is the reservoir here north of Kiev. It's actually not called the Dnipro River, it's called the Kiev Sea, which is really interesting. But here we can see that the Ukrainians are hauling out the remaining parts of this Mi-35, and we can see that the Russians have a decent amount of assembly that will be required to get this thing running again. If the Russians can't get their hands on it, maybe the Ukrainians can do something with it. I feel they'll most likely just make it into an amusement park or maybe a display piece. But very interesting to see, and also a perfect reminder of what these first few days were like. If y'all remember, I actually showed the video on stream of the massive Russian helicopters that flew to the Hostomel airport, flying over the Kiev Sea, and 2 of them got shot down on film. That was an incredibly long time ago, literally 100 days ago. But we can see that the Ukrainians finally pulled out this helicopter 100 days into this war, and it was one of the helicopters that was the first to be shot down in the entire war. And so, considering that it was one of the first to be shot down in the war, I wonder if the Ukrainians are going to make this a special museum piece, considering that this was one of the first casualties of the war. With that, we're now going to be moving on into Borodyanka, which, while Bucha-Hostomel European area gets a lot of coverage for the amount of atrocities that the Russians committed there, Borodyanka was even in a worse state. The amount of war crimes that were found here, also the level of destruction, was far worse than what was ever found at Bucha-Hostomel and Irpin. We can actually see that Elon, much like he provided the Starlink internet systems, has also provided some assistance in Borodyanka as well. We could see today that in this tweet, Mikhailo Fedorov has once again praised Elon Musk for providing Tesla Powerwall stations, which will help to give energy during blackouts. And so we can still see that while Elon Musk and a lot of Western, I guess you could say, important figures do kind of take a backseat in this war in terms of their actual sway on how things are going in the ground, Elon and other Western figures, I guess you could say, are still doing a great deal of help in Ukraine, and they're trying to help out every way possible that's within their reach. And so it's, of course, great to see that Elon, of course, is still trying to help out the Ukrainians any way he can, and hopefully he can continue on well into the future. With that, we're now going to move into the city of Kiev. It's really crazy to think, because I've been here 100 days, and surprisingly, once you think back about it, it doesn't feel like 100 days for me. At the very start of this thing, I was literally spending my whole entire day from when I woke up to when I went to sleep, looking at this war, researching it, putting together points. Back then, I got almost no sleep all the time. It was an incredibly tough thing to do, but I bared with it. But of course, around day 30, I got exhausted and started taking Mondays off. But still, I remember when Zelensky actually made the speech with all of his political figures around him. There's the picture from the original video where everyone remembers him going, so-and-so toot, so-and-so toot, so-and-so toot, I'm toot, we're all here, you know, because toot in Ukrainian means here. We could see the picture from day 2, and we could see that they recreated the exact same video today on day 100. And it's very crazy, honestly, that all of them are still alive. You know, no one expected Zelensky to live too long because everyone thought the Russians would just steamroll the capital, hold a trial, and have him killed or something. But on day 100, they are standing in the exact same spot in Kiev, filming the exact same video. And we actually have that video right here. And so I'm going to let y'all see it because it is a blast from the past that was made just today. And here it is.
Лідер фракції тут. Голова Офісу Президента тут, прем'єр-міністр України Шмигаль тут, Подоляк тут, президент тут. Наша команда набагато більше. Збройні сили України тут. Найголовніше наш народ, народ нашої держави тут. Захищаємо Україну вже 100 днів. Перемога за нами. Слава Україні! Героям слава!
And it's very weird to think that it's 100 days in the future, and they're all still there, and they made the video again. Honestly, it's incredible. It seems surreal to me that we've made it this far in the war. It's 100 days in, and we're seeing that the Russians have still made no progress. And as we go later on the stream, and I highly suggest that y'all hang out and wait later on when we get to the northern Donbass news, we're actually going to see that the advances that the Russians have made so far were in vain, as the Ukrainians are now pushing them back in almost every direction. With that, we're now going to move on to the last bit of news we've gotten in Kiev, before we move on to our location unknowns, where we can see that Putin apparently is trying to gather up some material to create new Russian soldiers with. Here we can see Putin's face painted onto the back of a septic truck, and his mouth, where his mouth would be, is where the septic tank hose is for the septic truck.
Так, шановні, якщо є бажання, щоб кое-хто відсосав, замовляйте.
Gotta say, that's incredible advertising for the septic truck company. They're going to be having customers through the roof after this, and also, they might want to be careful because if that actually is Putin, he could just spit that stuff back out and new Russian soldiers would be coming right off the press. Whether they're trained or actually have equipment and arms, that's another question. But still, the Ukrainian, I guess you could say, police need to keep an eye on this septic truck, make sure that Putin doesn't hop out of it and do anything crazy. With that, we're now going to move on to the location unknowns, where we can see some very interesting stuff today. Of course, today was a very good day for day 100 to occur on. Of course, can't really control when day 100 of the war would be. I guess the better thing would be to say the events that occurred today were perfect for day 100. There's been nothing but exceptional news from the Ukrainians as to how things are going. And so, you know, we're going to start it here now that we're actually getting into frontline news, because I'm telling y'all, it's been unbelievable today, the news I've heard. Also, you can kind of tell what it is in the title. But with that, we can see that the Ukrainians have started an unboxing video series. The guy who I said would be great at doing unboxing videos looks like he took it seriously, and now we can see them doing unboxing videos for real. This video is 14 minutes long, but they literally unbox the entire BMP and show what's inside of it. So if you want to see in detail what exactly this BMP looked like and what was inside of it, click on the link in the description below. There's a map down there, and you can actually click on this link yourself and watch it on your own time. But I am going to summarize it and cut through it just to save everyone else's time.
Метрах від російських позиций. То, что вы сейчас видите, вы не видите никогда. Юра все-таки уговорил меня поехать. Прицелы. Конечно. Какая? Давай покажем. Рабочая тетрадь. Командир 8-го мотострелковой роты. Гвардии капитан. Фурдуй Дмитрий Евгеньевич. Ты смотри, он как. Капитан Фурдуй. Вы просто вор. Батенька, ай-яй-яй.
Отлично, Моторолочки. Это нашим пацанам. Да, открываешь каждый раз, как киндер-сюрприз. Юра, спасибо, что я просто
We can now see
собирался
that they've
спать, потому что я
unpacked
устал,
most of the
как черт.
BMP.
Юра все-таки уговорил меня поехать снять. Говорит, пошли, ну покажи переправу, ну покажи переправу. Я говорю, да давай завтра уже. Хорошо, что сегодня поехали. Могли это бы не найти. Завтра уже могли бы этого не увидеть.
So now that we've seen them actually put all the contents out on the ground, we're now going to skip through the video a little bit and see them go through the unboxing process of this slightly used, but still pre-owned BMP.
Производство кинообъективов.
По производству кинообъективов.
Классных. Iron Glass Adapters.
Так, ну, в данном случае Product Placement, да, в нашем видео будет. Iron Glass Adapters, пожалуйста, если у кого есть возможность купить, покупайте. Владелец немного занят. Он занят обнаружением и вскрытием и уничтожением российских БМП, танков и тому подобной
You
техники.
can see that they're having a little bit of trouble with the door handles.
В наши прекрасные земли. Вообще, действительно, вот летишь сверху, вот настолько красиво все. Вот як был не цимо скали.
You see that they're still trying to bust it open. It appears that it's giving them a little bit of trouble.
Враг припрятал. Мне нужен вал и короткоствол. Давай, две сразу. Макароны.
We can now see that they've finally gotten the door open,
Настроились-то как, а?
and it is literally a treasure chest of garbage. Look at how much stuff was on that floor. You couldn't even walk on the floor. Look at all that. I mean, it's insane, honestly, how much garbage the Russians carry around. There's really no room for the troops inside of the troop carrying compartment, and I'm sure that causes hell on earth if it was actually like that while they're being moved around, for them to get out of the BMP because they're having to literally fjord over a pile of garbage in the middle of the tank.
Строились-то как, а?
А ну давайте инструмент сразу в сторону. Вот він інструмент, то що нам надо. Да. Що, давай отсюда, давай вправо. Справа.
Что ж тут лежит?
Так.
Так. Тут должны быть личные вещи
А це, наверное, не буде.
командира роты капитана Фурдуя.
We can see a bag of garbage here,
Кстати, хорошая радийка. Нам радистам пригодится. Где?
filled with a whole bunch of
Отлично.
electrical supplies, I guess you could call it.
Это нашим пацанам. Блин, а кстати, это
You can
может
also see loads of radios in the bag,
скорее всего, это наши.
handheld radios, that is.
Все, рации забрали.
Здесь срач, как всегда.
You can now see some more garbage.
По-любому хоть. Это, я думаю, что где-то подмутили фотоаппарат. Вряд ли с собой на войну.
You now see that they're carrying around a camera,
Камера. То же
a
самое.
second camera,
Да, видеокамера. Видеокамера.
Ты смотри, он как. Капитан Фурдуй. 8-я рота 3-го мотострелкового батальона. Так вы просто вор. Батенька, ай-яй-яй.
golly, look at all this. It's unbelievable. It goes on forever. We're going to skip forward a little bit because it does go on forever. And we're going to take a look at what we have a couple of minutes later.
Ага, здесь еще переносное зарядное устройство. Ну, толково придумано. Все удобно с антенной. Вот он у меня в руках остается.
So now you see him looking through the bag. Just nothing but garbage. It blows my mind. These people live in absolute filth whenever they're traveling around. It's terrible. I bet this is terrible for hygiene, you know, because all that crap is probably just sitting on the floor for weeks on end. No one really messes with it. They just keep on piling up stuff. And oh my gosh. It's honestly crazy. I can't even put this into words. How much garbage, how much bull is inside of this BMP? I wouldn't be able to ride in one like that. I would wish to be left behind if I had to ride in a BMP like
Это
this.
отсюда, с этого рюкзачка.
Значит, сюда. Значит, это сюда положим. Все должно быть в порядке. Нужно передать компетентным специалистам максимально полную.
Еще одна радиостанция. Да ничего себе.
You see that they're still piling stuff up. We're now going to skip forward a little bit. We can see that they're bringing out more stuff. Of course, we saw this earlier in the video, but it's insane to see how much time it's taking them to get all this stuff out. It never ends. And imagine the Russians that bailed out of that BMP probably ran back to their lines. Imagine how much garbage they tried to pack onto themselves and run off with. And that much garbage per person was removed from the BMP before the Ukrainians could get there and see these literal mounds of junk.
И еще одна рация.
О, нет, это
Не
не наша.
рация. ПНСР.
А, она ставится на штатив. Штатив вот сюда.
We can now see what appears to be a normal
Ага, вот она.
radio. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know what that thing is for certain.
Прикольно.
I'm going to skip forward a little bit more.
Устройство. Все здесь.
And we can now see that the Ukrainians have taken the Russians' pretty much supply BMP and they've turned it into a yard sale, and they're now gathering around and looking at all the stuff that was in it.
Антенны, полный комплект. Так, рабочая тетрадь. Командир 8-го мотострелковой роты, гвардии капитан, Фурдуй Дмитрий Евгеньевич. Дмитрий Евгеньевич, а воровали вы зачем вот эти вещи? Вот, видеокамеру, фотокамеру, вот этот вот динамик мобильный.
Элемент любитель белой вещи, брюшки поносить, да?
Oh my god, it just clicked in my head, y'all. We are always watching the infantry riding on these armored personnel carriers, and they're always riding on top of them. Is that because they filled up the inside with so much junk that they can't actually get in there? Because that just crossed my mind. We have rarely ever seen infantry inside of these armored personnel carriers anymore. They're always riding on top. And I think if we were to connect two and two together, that may be the reason why, is because the inside of all of the armored personnel carriers look like this. And imagine with this much flammable junk in there, how much worse the BMPs catch on fire when these things get hit. I was just thinking about that too, because if you're riding on top of this compartment and this ATGM round goes in there, it catches the gas on fire that's in this fuel tank, which you can see right here where my mouse cursor is, and then it catches all of this stuff on fire. The fire is going to be tremendous. That may be one of the reasons why we always see most of these BMPs literally burn out to the point you can't even identify what version of the BMP it is. But, man, we're going to skip forward to the end.
Жирно. Еще нульцевый прицел. Это второй прицел. Один по Н93, 3 ПКМ. Вообще в идеальном состоянии, новенький.
Главный спонсор наших вооруженных сил РФ. РФ.
Русские, вот специально буду на русском языке разговаривать. Приезжайте, сыкливые, сюда, которые кидают свою технику, потому что нам ее очень не хватает, честно. Огромное спасибо вот тем, кто бросили и повысили нашу боездатность. Мы используем технику по назначению, нам ее не хватает, и мы будем качественно уничтожать русню. Слава Украине!
Героям слава!
That's the end of the video, and it's insane. Oh my gosh. It blows my mind to think how much garbage the Russians are, like, it's not garbage, it's stuff, but when they loot it in such a way that it practically just becomes garbage sitting inside of their tank that has no purpose rather than they're hoping to get home and use that stuff. And it's unbelievable to think that a lot of Russian vehicles could be filled with junk like that. But anyways, that video spoke for itself, and so we're going to move on to the next one. In this next video, we can see a Russian car hit a landmine. And now that we saw this last video about that armored personnel carrier and how filled with stuff it was, I'm wondering if this little UAZ, I'm assuming it's a UAZ, was filled with. I'm sure it was filled literally to the roof with the garbage, and we're about to see it actually get hit by a mine here. So let's take a look at this. And gets hit by the mine right about there. And now we can see it drifting down the road. And it looks like that driver and whoever was in there is not having a good day. We can now see that one of them apparently was so angry about the mine blowing up under their car that they literally exploded. We'll check that out again. Very interesting. But with that, we see that the Ukrainians have managed to wipe out a small staff car. I'm not sure if it was actually carrying staff per se. I'm assuming it was probably a UA-469, which is the usual, I guess you could say, Russian kind of car that they use in the military, if they have enough of them. But it's very interesting to see the Ukrainians have knocked another one out. We've seen them knock these out occasionally, but not often. These are actually a bit more of a rarer kill, or a wipeout, I guess you could call it. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see that a BMP2 gets destroyed by a drone. It looks like no Ukrainians will be doing an unboxing video on this one. It appears that they play Pop Go the Weasel instead. Here's the video. We can actually see that the commander or the driver's hatch is open. We can now see them dropping the bomb on it, and it appears that the drone operator who's operating this drone was trying to play horseshoe and hand grenades, because we could see that when the bomblet was first dropped, right there, we could see that he was kind of aiming for the open port on the tank, which if he actually lands that shot, I'm going to be pretty impressed. Sadly, he didn't land that shot, but he did manage to hit the hatch behind the open one. We can now see that the hull has been punctured as smoke is coming out of the front hatch. We can now see the drone backing up and taking a good look at the BMP. We can now see that the BMP appears to be smoking a little bit. I don't know if the Russians got the memo, but smoking kills. And it looks like the Russians are hotboxing it there. Of course, we can see at the end of the video that the BMP looks to be slightly charred, probably well done, if not burnt. But it's great to see that the Ukrainians managed to take out another BMP here on day 100, and a BMP2 nonetheless, which I do consider the better version of the BMP1 in many different aspects. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see bomblets dropped on the Russians again, this time by an R18, which has kind of become the Ukrainians' go-to drone to commit attacks against Russian forces. Here's a video from the infrared footage. We can see some kind of KAMAZ truck here. And we can now see that it's about to be combust, past tense, because the bomblet is going to drop close enough to it that it will destroy it. We can now see the bomblet being dropped on a T-72B3, and for some reason, I actually feel like this was something I may have covered before, because the way these vehicles were killed seems the same as something I've done before. So take that one with a grain of salt. I think we may have actually shown that one before, but still, great to see the Ukrainians knocking out even more vehicles as the war goes on. With that, we're on to the next video where we can see some concealed artillery, and unlike the Russians that just lazily put trees on the side of their artillery pieces, which then fall off, the Ukrainians did a masterful job. I actually had a hard time finding out where the artillery piece was until I saw the muzzle brake. The back of the artillery piece literally looks like a bush, which is really, really good job in terms of actually laying out these tree branches onto this piece. We can actually see, now this was the impressive part to me, whenever the Russians fired, all of the foliage that they put on their artillery pieces would fall off, and it would just look like a normal artillery piece. So you could tell it was done just for the video. The Ukrainians fired this piece. It had thunderous recoil, and all of the foliage managed to stay on it. Notice that. That is really impressive. And it lets you know that the Ukrainians are actually not just doing this for show, they're actually doing this with a purpose. Because they're actually making sure they'll last beyond the first shot. So wonderful to see, and it's great to know that the Ukrainians are trying to go that extra little mile if they can to make sure that their artillery cannot be subject to counterfire as easily or be sighted by a drone as quickly. We're now going to be moving on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see for the first time on film the Ukrainians using a Shilka. For those of y'all who don't know what a Shilka is, the Shilka is a ZSU-23 I think -4. This is one of the older versions of, I guess you could say, an anti-air vehicle that was Soviet made. Most of these were produced during Soviet times, but I believe it uses, if I'm correct, let me go back and make sure. I think it's 4 30 millimeters. Let me check. 4 23 millimeter autocannons. So it's an interesting little system, and usually over, I guess you could say, prior wars in the 21st century, we've seen these largely be used in anti-infantry roles, specifically by the Syrians in particular. The Syrians would drive these things into the cities, and they would just start like chopping up infantry because 4 23 millimeter autocannons is actually pretty good against infantry. But we can see now in this video right here that the Ukrainians are not just using this against infantry, they're actually trying to shoot down a drone with this Shilka. So here's the video. Unfortunately, I have to keep it muted, but we can see the Shilka lining up its shot on the drone and then firing. And we can see that the recoil is pretty fierce, and it's shaking this camera around like a rag doll. Very interesting to see, and it's cool to know that the Ukrainians do have a wide variety of different kinds of anti-air defense systems. And while the Shilka isn't the exceptional long-range anti-air, I guess you could say, defense system, it is still pretty competent. It's comparable to the Gepard in a way. So it's wonderful to see that the Ukrainians do have some of these, and they are using them against drones. I'm assuming it would be much more economical to use a Shilka against a drone than it would be to, say, use an S-300 or an S-400 against that same drone. You know, you always want to make sure that you're managing the costs of this whole thing, because if you don't, the costs could get away and your country could be deep in debt after the war. With that, we're now going to be moving on to our next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see some fun in the trenches. The Ukrainians are making sure that the Russians get a little bit of confetti today, and in this video we can see that it was delivered nearly on mark, if not right on mark. We can now see the bomblet on its way, and it was a hole-in-one as it went straight into the little opening right there on the trench and blew up. So the shrapnel is now traveling down the lengths of this dugout, it seems, and the Russians down there are having a little bit of a confetti surprise. I do hope that it was someone's birthday down there, so that way the confetti was not poorly used. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see a Stuken Attack, everyone's favorite anti-tank system, once again makes its appearance on the stream, and its skiff variant that was going to be exported to the Saudis. So here's the video. And, of course, on Reddit, they always delete tweets, which is incredibly annoying, so we're now going to go to the actual source on Twitter itself. We can now see them looking at the Russians in the distance. It appears that they have some kind of armored personnel carrier or a car. And we can now see that the Studna has been launched and is on its way. We see that it's still traveling, and the vehicles have only gotten closer as the missile draws closer as well. Finally, we can see the hit, and we can see that something or someone got some flight miles. I'm not really sure what that was that went flying. It was kind of hard to tell. It didn't really look like any part of a tank. And so we're not going to actually rewind that to look at that. But that was something a little interesting to see, and it's great to know that the Ukrainians are using the Stugnas incredibly well. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the last two bits of location unknown news, where we can see a marriage occur on the front lines. This is actually a little joke skit that two soldiers did with each other, but it was hilarious, so let's take a look at it.
Милый, милый,
Да.
я хочу этот прекрасный день сделать тебе предложение.
Да, я так долго этого ждал.
Ты выйдешь за меня?
Конечно, нет.
Well, I guess you could say that hopefully their marriage won't be explosive, and it looks like they already have the divorce papers written into their marriage. If one simply pulls the grenade off that man's finger, it looks like they'll be instantly separated for the rest of their lives, however long they may be after that grenade pin is pulled. Most likely around 3 to 4 seconds. But of course, it's great to see the Ukrainians having wonderful senses of humor on the front lines, and even cracking funny little silly jokes like this, because it does let us know that their morale is high and they're not too miserable, because they still have something in them to be able to make a joke. So really like this one. Honestly, it's one of the more creative jokes I've seen so far. And so I have to give these guys, of course, I guess you could call it the Zelensky Award for comedy. Hopefully they'll have a pretty good career in the future, because I think there's nothing but bright paths ahead of them as far as their comedy. With that, we're now going to move on to the last bit of location unknown news, where we can see the Ukrainians versus the Russians when they get shelled. This is literally a side-by-side comparison of how a Ukrainian soldier who nearly looks like a boy acts when being shelled, and then how a Russian soldier acts when he comes under shelling as well. So here's the video.
Собралась.
As you can see, calm and collected. They even have a little chuckle about the entire thing, although you can hear it's getting a little close. The Russian, on the other hand, is literally hunkered down as far as he can go, and he is freaked out, you can tell. Let's check this out.
Да близко, блин. Ой, блядь, сечет.
He literally tucks his head down and everything, waiting for the artillery blast, and that one wasn't even as close as to one in the other video. That one sounded much further away, and he was still freaking out, and that kind of gives you an idea of a perfect side-by-side comparison, and of course is not reflective of every case, but it is reflective of the overall majority of how Ukrainians act under barrage, and how this guy acts under barrage. So I guess you could say, as usual, the Russians are pretty scared when it actually comes to doing anything. And this may have been one of the guys that we saw in a previous video. Of course, this isn't true, but I feel like he would have the same personality, where they get asked, would you die for your country? And they say yes. And then the guy says, well, we have a list here. We would like you to sign up on this patriotic register. And then they try and run off or say, no, I'm not doing that. This is probably one of those guys. And he just ended up being conscripted, or he got conscripted and then forced to sign a contract. So with that, we have now covered all of the location unknowns for today. We actually had a pretty good amount of funny ones in there, and so I hope y'all did enjoy that. So with that, we're now going to start moving up towards Russia to cover our only bit of Russian news today. But before we actually get there, we're going to answer 3 questions from the chat and then return to the Russia, Kharkiv, and Northern Donbass news, and then we'll move on to our next question segment after that. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right. So first up on our super chats tonight, we have an $85 donation from Rick09 Hunter, who says, "For services rendered, thank you for the intel. Like number 981. Y'all get in there."
Well, I thank you so much for the support, Rick. I don't really think he's actually supported the channel before, has he?
Yeah, I think he's new.
Yeah, I think he's new, and I thank you so much for the massive amount of support. Of course, we're always greatly appreciative, and it does help us to keep running, and I'm so happy to see that a lot of people always support this channel and always want to let us know that they enjoy what we're doing, and they also want to ensure that it can keep on going. So I thank you so much once again, and of course, it's been an adventure for me to go through 100 days of this war. I started off literally just covering the news to just a few people, just a handful, and after that went on to the channel becoming incredibly large, growing at an unbelievable pace, reaching out to Ukrainians inside of Ukraine, like Operator Starsky, to ask them about the war and what's going on, bringing on guest stars. It's honestly been incredible, and I think that it's something impressive. So I thank you so much for appreciating the services we render, and always thank you so much for the support. With that, we're going to be moving on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $60 donation from Mom Cat Max, who says, 100 days, Slava Ukraine, the Ukraine stands.
And I do have to say, yes, Ukraine still stands 100 days later and actually has less area to fight over right now than they did at the start of the war. And that tells you how well it's been going. And also with the news we're about to cover in the northern Donbass area, make sure to stick around for that. It's incredibly unbelievable, really, but it's true. It's amazing to think that the Ukrainians have done so well. I think they're actually going to best the Russians by the end of this war. And I haven't really doubted that since the start. So with that, I thank you so much for the support once again, and also the kind words. It does mean a lot to Matthew and me, because, you know, while getting support to continue the channel and helping it to keep on running, it's always great to hear people say nice things and say that they do appreciate the efforts we go through in helping out Ukraine. So with that, I thank you so much for the support once again, and we're going to move on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to return to the news.
And real quick, I want to recognize a $52 donation from one of our channel regulars, Junebug. Thank you very much for that, very much. Junebug didn't leave a comment, but we appreciate the support. And Enforcer, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, I would. I thank you so much, Junebug, both Junebug and Junebug72, who have been around an incredibly long time, the both of them, and have supported this channel a pretty good bit, and have been huge fans. I don't know if they're related. I don't know if they're both called Junebug because they know each other or something, but I'm always appreciative of everyone who does support this channel, and thank you so much for the support. It will help us to keep running in the future, because the only way this channel runs, and I've said this a couple of times, but I still think it's important to say, the only way this channel runs is off of our viewer support. We don't make any money off of ads because we don't run any ads, and so the only way the channel survives is through the support of our viewers and them wanting us to keep this thing going. And so with that, I thank you so much once again, Junebug, for the support. It always helps us out a lot. And with that, we're going to move on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to move on to the Moscow, Kharkiv, and northern Donbass news.
All right, and next up we have a $50 donation from another channel regular, Praise Adonai, who says, Enforcer, now I know why I left the channel in the early days, because I thought you were a gamer. I checked back later and called Moscow Mike. I got hooked then. I got excited about helping, and now I don't miss a single stream. Happy 100th anniversary.
Well, I thank you very much for the support and also telling me the adventures you've gone through with me as well. And while I did show the game on the first night, that was actually the only night I showed it, and it was only for about 20 minutes at the very start. After that, I always showed the map, and I actually started collecting the points and information right then. And what was crazy is that you could actually hear me say, with that being said, in the intro tonight, first thing off the bat, that was actually the first with that being said I ever said on my channel. And that was a historical moment right there, because everyone remembers me for saying with that being said. And I said it all the way back then 100 days ago. So I guess that's kind of a thing at this point that I just do without reflex. But still, a lot of people like it. A lot of people hate it. But of course, I'm just going to keep doing it because so many people find it hilarious at this point that I want to make sure that people do get a little chuckle here and there. It doesn't have to be all too serious, and I don't take myself too seriously to not be able to joke about some of the things I do. So with that, I thank you, of course, Praise Adonai, for the wonderful amount of support. It always helps out this channel a great deal. And of course, you've been around for an incredibly long time. And it's great to know that we have longtime fans and viewers who enjoy what we do and how we report the news. And so with that, we have now reached the end of this question segment. If you have sent in a super chat tonight, or if you're going to, do not fret at all. We always answer every single super chat before the end of the stream. And so we will answer all of them within the next question segment or the question segment at the very end of the stream. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on to Moscow, where today we've heard something that sounds like it's straight out of American Greed. So I'm going to let y'all see this. It's insane. They're literally calling Queen Elizabeth II a Nazi and saying that she said Sieg Heil as a child. So let's watch this. Of course, the quality is pretty low. I'm sorry about that. But you can see the speech-to-text in the bottom of the screen. So here's the video.
Елизавета, кстати, вы же вспомнили, вы
Да.
королева сегодня
Да.
70 лет как уже на царстве.
Совершенно верно.
Которая, между прочим, ее сегодня все поздравляют. Поздравляют, раз уж мы вспомнили про нацистов и фашистов. Зиговала в своем детстве. Было и такое.
Посмотрим дальше.
Oh my lord. You know, they had to pull the queen into it, and the queen has hardly said or done anything about this war. Of course, she made a little speech at the beginning saying hopefully it can all be peacefully resolved, but beyond that, she hasn't really done much. She pops up in the news in Russia because she just went through the Platinum Jubilee. She's already been the longest ruler, or the longest reigning monarch in British history, and so she's actually the first monarch, I believe, to go through the Diamond Jubilee and also the Platinum Jubilee. I think they came up with the name Platinum in this modern age because no monarch has actually made it this far in their reign to actually have a jubilee of this type of, you know, I guess you could say age. But still, that's the reason why they're now covering her. And it's literally like they're trying to make like an American Greed kind of story about this. Well, I guess you could call it like Russian Greed or something, you know, like next up on Russian Greed, trouble in Britain, you know, or something like that. I don't know. But still, it's stupid to me that they've got to make a tabloid and a story about everything. And they're now trying to spin that the Queen is a Nazi, although she served in the Territorial Auxiliary Service in World War II for the British government that was fighting the Nazi Germans. You can't make this kind of stuff up. The Russian propaganda literally knows no bounds, and they never confine themselves to any kind of reason, fact, or knowledge. They just shoot at whoever they can. It's kind of like a spray and pray philosophy, much like their Russian soldiers are actually doing in the field. And when actually concentrated with a little bit of common sense and at least a little bit of knowledge about how the world works, their propaganda falls apart 1,000 times over. That still doesn't stop people from pushing it. You know, we're always in a battle trying to keep bots off of this thing, but still insane to see and very, very stupid. So with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of news, which is actually outside of Russia. That's all the Russian news we have today. And thank God, because if we had any more news like that, I think I'd be losing brain cells. We're now going to be moving on down into the Kharkiv area, where unfortunately we haven't gotten any more reports as to how the front line is progressing in this area. We haven't heard of any Ukrainian advances, but we have also haven't heard of any kind of Russian activity whatsoever. So by and large, it does appear that the salient has once again stalled and the Ukrainians aren't pushing it all too much. We can see here, though, that the Ukrainians did destroy a Russian satellite communications, I guess you could say, unit in this area, in the salient. And so here's the video of that. I do have to keep it muted, but they are now showing the exact coordinates of where the satellite communications vehicle was seen, which is right there. We can see that it had some camo netting on top of it, but that didn't do enough to stop the Ukrainians from finding it. We can now see the artillery landing down on the specific spot where those vehicles were seen, and it looks like they won't be doing much more communicating. It looks like their whole entire bit of communication stopped. It looks like they started a whole new line of communications, and it looks like they're going to start talking to the man upstairs. So I think they've actually moved on into a whole other category of satellite communications. I don't really think it's the man upstairs. I think they may actually be meeting the man downstairs, but I'm not going to say anything like that. We'll just, of course, just leave that to the powers that be. We can now see that the Ukrainians are continuing to make sure that the barbecue ensues, and we can see that there's a fire. Well, no, that's apparently just the explosion inside the shed, and they're hitting the vehicles and the equipment that is inside these farm sheds out there in the distance. We can now see the smoke billowing up, and with it, the hopes and dreams of Russia actually communicating with their forces are dissipating as well. Communications is a vitally important aspect of warfare. Without communications, an army is disorganized and doesn't have an idea of what it's doing. And we can see the Ukrainians attacking the very, I guess you could say, snake's head of the Russian communications in this area, directly attacking a satellite communications station right near the front lines. So, of course, wonderful to see, but we don't have any more information on what's going on in this area beyond that. So we can only hope and pray that the Ukrainians will be able to push the Russians out of this northern salient. It's not really like there's too much pressure on them. They still have enough information to know that the forces there are highly disorganized and poorly supplied. So it's not like they're going to be able to do anything in the future anyways. And so with that, we're now going to move past the Chuhuiv and Balaklia area because there's nothing to report there. We're also going to move past the Izium area because it also appears to have fallen quiet. And finally, we're going to move to the Lyman area. Of course, the Lyman area hasn't seen any progress since the Russians have captured the town. They're now having to attack Ukrainians, which are uphill, since there is kind of like a, I guess you could call, like hill range right on the Severodonetsk River. And so they're having a little bit of a tough time, and they haven't been able to advance since. But we can see today that the Russians, of course, are trying desperately to uproot the Ukrainians from their positions, and they're using grads to try and soften them up. But, of course, to no avail.
Третий готов.
Где такой?
Внимание, остаткам! Залпом! 330!
Interesting to see. Don't really think that's actually going to amount to much because they haven't done anything so far, and we've actually seen barrages larger than that over the past week or so. We're now going to be moving back behind the lines to the Ukrainian side, where we can see that the Ukrainians responded in kind, but this time with a larger caliber MLRS system as they fired hurricanes at the Russians. Here's the video. Oh no, that's copyrighted. We can see the MLRS firing its rockets, and of course, these are some big daddies right here. Of course, 203, 207mm rockets do a decent amount of damage. Both the Russians and the Ukrainians filled MLRSs of this size and have been levying them against enemy forces. Of course, the Russians don't really levy them against enemy forces, they levy them against Ukrainian civilians. So, in that regard, I guess you could say that the Russians used them for multiple different purposes, and that kind of always makes me think, whenever I talk about this kind of stuff with the Russians and say that they use the same kind of system, there's always a bit of a different context when the Russians use them, because we know that they've been targeting civilians directly with MLRSs, towed artillery pieces, ballistic and cruise missiles. And so every single time I see one of those systems, I imagine how many people that one artillery piece may have killed right there, or how many it may have killed before the video. And we don't actually know the figures to that, but that always makes me feel that while, of course, it's somewhat pitiful sometimes, we do hear sob stories from the Russians here and there, most of them have no qualms with committing war crimes and killing civilians whenever they get the inclination to. Sometimes we know that they aren't even given the order to, they just do it on their own. And when you think about it like that, it kind of brings into perspective again, while it does sound weird to cheer on sometimes the demise of Russian soldiers, when putting into that context, it, you know, kind of makes sense. Because while I did start off the beginning of this war, of course, giving respect to both the Ukrainians and the Russians that were getting killed on video, after a while of seeing what the Russians did, especially after the Ukrainians liberated the northern front and saw all the atrocities they committed in occupied territories, it made me perfectly okay with seeing Russians get blasted. So hopefully these MLRSs are landing on target and, of course, hitting the Russians where it hurts. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the Lyman area as it's fallen into a stalemate, and we're also going to be moving past this area in the front lines in between Lyman and Severodonetsk. The Russians have reached the Severodonetsk River across the entirety of this front line, but the problem is that a river crossing is very hard to do. We've already seen the Russians attempt it twice in the same area, and they failed both times, incurring heavy losses, one time losing around 2.5 BTGs, at least in the number of vehicles. So with that, we're now going to move into Severodonetsk itself, and we're actually going to start off with the biggest bit of news we have for today. Counterattacks have been gaining ground. I didn't actually believe it a day or two ago when I heard that the Ukrainians were conducting counterattacks in Severodonetsk. I thought that's kind of weird. You know, I think that they're actually going to most likely be retreating out of the city and into Lysychansk, since it does seem to be an advantageous defensive position. But we've heard today, actually, that the Ukrainian counterattack has succeeded and has managed to recapture about 30% of the town's area, and they now control 50% of the town, and the Russians control the other 50%. So right now, it looks like while the Russians were making decent progress prior to yesterday, it looks like the Ukrainians have started to counterattack and immediately started to push them back, which shows you how weak these offensives really are from the Russian side. They're very weak. In fact, they really have no, I guess you could say, power to them. They have a little bit of punching power at the start, but once you give them a little bit of a push, they just fall apart. And so I'm not sure with that kind of progress if the Russians will still be within Severodonetsk tomorrow, and hopefully they won't be. So yes, that is the reason why the title is the way it is tonight. The Ukrainians are retaking a key city. This is the only city they actually control on the eastern side of the Rubizhny, well, not the Rubizhny, the Severodonetsk River, and that is a huge deal because it, of course, is a foothold to begin counterattacks across the Severodonetsk River. And so while they can lose it and they'd be in a great defensive position, losing it would put them in a very bad position to continue on offensives. So it's very interesting to see them taking back Severodonetsk, and now we're going to go to the videos we've gotten from inside the city today. Here we can actually see a video from an apartment in Severodonetsk where we can actually hear the firefights occurring in the distance in between the Ukrainian and the Russian soldiers.
А ну давайте, блядь. Дуэт, блядь. Дуэт минометки и новой техники.
We can, of course, hear the massive explosions in the distance.
Дуэт вражеской минометки. И нашей техники. Блять, а как бы нам по нам не начали, блядь, прилетать? Говорю, как бы по нам не начали сейчас прилетать? Они все ближе.
And that's the end of the video, but you could hear that the fights were very intense outside of that apartment block. And of course, every sound of that explosion was the sound of the Ukrainians pushing the Russians back a little by little to recapture another 30% of the city today. Always wonderful to hear, and I think that it is very great to see. With that, we're now going to move on to our next video, because this is actually going to lead us into the next one. I think some of this progress may be because of the international volunteers that have been brought in from around the world. Sorry for that voice crack there, that was about the worst one I've ever had. But we actually heard about 2 days ago, and the video was put out today, that the Foreign Legion had arrived in the Severodonetsk area. And when I say the Foreign Legion, I mean the Foreign Legion. Almost all of the nations that have been volunteering, like the United States, the British, the Canadians, the Germans, the French, and so on, were sent to Severodonetsk to fight in the city. And here we can see the video of these soldiers being unloaded into the town and getting ready to fight. So here it is, and we can also hear an interview at the very start with an Australian volunteer, which is really cool.
Oh, I think it's fantastic. I think it's an opportunity. I think since coming here, it's been amazing how many people from all around the world have come together to help out a country in need. I feel like it's really, really inspirational to have a lot of these guys with previous experience that actually lend their hand, you know, and step up and volunteer. So I'm from Australia. It's quite far away, quite hard to get here, and even I stepped up. So hopefully I inspire more people to come and do the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, Americans, come.
You can now see them getting ready to
It's
go.
war for Georgians as well. I'm just a 22-year-old kid, and I feel that's the right thing to do. And we're gonna push Russians back. It's gonna take a day, month, or a year. It doesn't matters. We are on the right side of the history, so we're gonna make sure all of us are gonna get back.
Gatorade. I just noticed that. I'm sorry, but I saw that this man's carrying around Gatorade with the nipple top on the bottle, and I have to say, doesn't the nipple top on Gatorade make Gatorade taste that much better? Don't know about y'all, but for some reason it does change the flavor just a little bit. This man has some taste, and also it's the, I think it's what flavor is that, Matthew? Like the lime green looking one, isn't it lime itself?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, but we can see this man's carrying around some lime-flavored Gatorade. This man's got some class. But anyways, I'm going to let y'all get back to the video.
Home with their families, and we make sure that occupants are not going to do the same.
We now see one soldier carting around an in-law.
Зараз перебуваємо в Северодонецьку, війська спішилися і рушили вже на свої позиції подалі. Нам прокоментували хлопці з Австралії, з Бразилії, з Грузії, тут і інші країни, французи, які прийшли захищати, і здебільшого вони говорять про те, що не може бути окупації наразі, не може бути агресії, вони прийшли захищати і допомагати українцям. Чуєте, на фоні бої йдуть. Це Северодонецьк. Виход!
We now hear some artillery coming in. We see the reporter duck and look into the distance where the artillery is coming from, but we can't see how the Legion is reacting to this. We can now see them just standing around, kind of enjoying their day. We now see one of them being brought back. It appears that he may be injured.
It's okay. Can you please unload?
Actually, looks like he got a hand wound, and it looks like they may have bandaged it and maybe put a splint on the afflicted finger. I can't really tell for certain, but we can tell it's bandaged up. You now see a little bit of blood, which of course they blurred out. But this man has made it out, and he's making his way to medical care. We can now see them exiting the city and driving past all of the ruined Russian vehicles. And that's the end of the video, and it is incredible to see that the Foreign Legion is in Severodonetsk fighting for the city. Part of this, I guess you could call a counterattack, back through the very streets that they were pushed out of days ago. And they're over there, and they're fighting, and they're getting shot and wounded as well. And that every single one of them have stepped up for a country that they never had to fight for, and they're fighting just to do the right thing. And that's a very honorable thing to think about, that they're willing to do such a thing. And I say that they deserve some very high praise for what they did. Unlike some Ukrainians, of course, who were called up in the general mobilization, while of course it's their duty to serve and defend their nation, these foreign volunteers had no call. The request was made around the world that volunteers step up and help the Ukrainian cause, and all of these brave men and women stepped up to help and fight inside of Ukraine. And so it's impressive to see, and they even get injured. And even seeing their friends get injured, the rest of them continue to press on. None of them ever think twice about the morality of what they're doing or the cause that they're fighting for. They keep on going. And the same cannot be said for the Russians. You got to give them a lot of praise, and they always look very well put together, and they always have nothing but incredible things to say. So with that, we're now going to move on to our next video from inside of Severodonetsk today, where we can see the Ukrainians getting involved in a street fight. We used to see a lot of videos like this from the Chechens in Mariupol, but now we're seeing the Ukrainians getting pretty confident in their pushes and just spraying the Russians further down the street. Ooh, it's got copyrighted music. Let me mute that. We see the Ukrainians just laying down the fire into the Russians in the distance. We could hear gunshots further down the street, which did let us know that there was a small firefight going on. But about halfway through the video, the gunfire stopped shooting at them, so I think that they largely may have took the guy out. I'm not really sure. But since the fire did stop and they were still in the area, it was pretty indicative that something had happened to the Russian downrange. We now see all the Ukrainians on the street. We now see one of the Ukrainian soldiers waving. Of course, he's got the whole entire Vietnam flak vest thing going on. Take a look at this. He's got no undershirt, just the ballistic vest. Of course, it was a flak jacket in Vietnam, but he's got the kit going, I guess you could say. With that, great to see that the Ukrainians are making massive progress in the city of Severodonetsk. No one believed, even I really didn't believe, that they seriously wanted to hold on to the city, but the actions that they've committed over the past day shows that this counterattack may be trying to retake the entire city. We'll of course have to wait and see. Maybe it was just the Ukrainians pushing back against the Russians to buy time for the rest of their forces to fjord across the Severodonetsk River, well, not the Severodonetsk River, the Severodonetsk River, and make it to Lysychansk. But at the same time, they're now pushing back. So I don't know if that was part of their plan or if that's what their intent is to do. But it's still good news nonetheless, and does show that even with the Russians trying to beef up their forces in this area as much as they can, they are still not infallible, and the Ukrainians, with the right kind of strategy and the right kind of timing, can still push them off their feet incredibly easy. We're now going to move to some news outside of the city that's been surrounding the area, and we can see that the Ukrainians rudely interrupted a propaganda video. I mean, like, the Ukrainians should be scolded for this kind of behavior. To interrupt this Russian man who's trying to make the Russian artillery seem like it's first rate and world class and actually fire at it within just around 20 seconds of the artillery opening up is absurd. It's unbelievable that the Ukrainians would actually want the Russians to see in some way, shape, or form that the Russians are getting blasted in every way. But anyways, I'm going to let y'all see the video because it's insane. This guy is literally trying to hype up the Russian artillery and talk about how great it is, and right after he says that, our Ukrainian artillery starts raining down counterfire on the specific toss. So here's the video.
Тяжелая огнеметная система. Даже с активными наушниками это очень громко. Я не представляю, что происходит в месте, куда эти ракеты попадают. Ну, помимо разрушительного такого термобарического эффекта, это стопроцентная деморализующая, очень мощная такая история. Поэтому...
And you can tell by his body language, he's like, the Russian artillery best in the world. They're just beating the Ukrainians all over.
Вот такое сочетание пряника в виде информационной работы при помощи громкоговорителей и вот такого страшного кнута, о котором только если слышать.
And then the illusion is broken as a Ukrainian shell lands right by him out in the distance trying to hit this toss that's firing at the Ukrainians. This man, looking over to the right side of the screen, has just realized, uh-oh, it looks like this film will never be shown to the public, and if I ever try and show it, I'll probably be put in prison for 15 years. That's the kind of expression that you would see. But of course, the Russians are so hard hit by the sanctions, they apparently can't film anything in high definition anymore, because all the videos that come out from the Russian side are in about 240p. But with that, I'm going to let the video continue. We can now see the reporter turn around, and all of his reporter friends are running for the hills.
Вот поднимается дым.
We can now see the toss trying to unload the rest of its missiles before it gets wiped out. And we now see the reporters have decided that they're a little too spooked. That was too close for comfort. They're now going to get out of there.
Да, только что украинская артиллерия отработала в наш район. Ну, этого следовало ожидать.
That's the end of the video, but it's hilarious to see a Russian trying to build a picture for the Russian public and then literally have it shattered by the Ukrainians mid-sentence. And the look on his face, although the quality of the film was low, you could tell as soon as he looked over to the side, he was like, oh no, he's like, now reality's catching up to me and we're getting slaughtered. And you know, there's something funny that I see every once in a while. It seems like the bots are getting a little bit more creative as the war goes on, and they're trying to say, you know, I'm all for Ukraine, because at the beginning they were really, I guess you could say, like, blatant about what they were saying because they had a lot of confidence. But as the war goes on, they're still trying to plant the seeds of doubt by saying, you know, the Ukrainians are doing okay, but the Russians are just steamrolling them right now. The casualties are high. The Ukrainians aren't really countering the Russians. There's nothing they can do. I got some messages like that the other night over Discord, and while this is something that some people are thinking, the information on the ground and what we're actually getting does not show that image whatsoever. And of course, you know, and I have to say this, I have never listened to anyone else when I make this news. I don't watch CNN, Fox, MSNBC. I don't watch other YouTube channels. I don't watch nothing. I sit here and I make this news and I come up with my own assumptions based off of what I'm seeing, based off of historical precedent. And I'm seeing that the Russians are losing. They're making no progress at this point anywhere, even in the Severodonetsk area, where they've diverted almost all of their efforts and all of their remaining strength into to try and push. There is just no way for them to recover this situation, and as evidenced in this video, they can't even make a good propaganda film anymore without it being interrupted by Ukrainian fire. And so with that, that's the end of that video, and we're now going to travel back behind the lines onto the Ukrainian side, where we can see the Ukrainians that may have caused that artillery blast on the other side of the front lines. Here we can see the Ukrainians firing D-20s and D-30s at Russian forces. I'm going to have to mute it because it does have copyrighted music, but here we can see one of the pieces firing. It's a D-20 or a D-30. We can see multiple ones firing. Of course, aimed directly at the Russians. Maybe aimed at that artillery piece, well, the toss that we saw earlier. We can actually see this guy meditating. What's he doing? Oh, wait a minute. I was just enjoying the artillery montage. Look at this man. He's getting in the zone. And this guy back here, he's... Oh my lord. This is actually a really funny clip right here. This guy is meditating. This guy is dancing. What a funny crew. I like that one. I mean, of course, see the Ukrainians relishing in their success. And also, we could see the resurgence of the ACU. Ew. The ACU... Wait a minute, no. Let me think of the actual name. ACU. Let me make sure that's it. ACU uniform. Oh, I forgot the name of the pattern. It's like universal something. But we can see one of the Ukrainian soldiers wearing this pattern, and the reason why these soldiers are wearing this pattern is because the US doesn't want these, and a lot of soldiers in the US military do not want these whatsoever, and that's something I can confirm hardcore, because I have a lot of friends in the military, and everyone wanted to shed these things off their bodies as soon as the new patterns came out just about a year ago. These things are ugly. There's no way around them. They were cool when they were introduced a little, but after time, they got old really quick, and they are hideous. And so everyone's been getting rid of these things, and it looks like in the end, the Ukrainians got a hold of these. So I mean, like, it's not a bad camo. It's just that it doesn't really blend in anywhere, and also it's so gray. It's a very grayscale kind of camo, and I'm not a huge fan of it. The new, I guess you could call them ACU patterns. I don't know the exact name of them, but I do like them a lot more. They just look better, and of course, y'all know that I like fashion over form a little bit more, and I would say that if you had to pick some kind of a camouflaged uniform, I would say that this is a much better alternative over the universal camo pattern that they were using before. So with that, of course, pretty funny to see a Ukrainian soldier wearing it, but we can see that the morale is high. They are making as many jokes as they can while they're firing the artillery, having a blast. And to be honest, if I had to say something that may sound slightly aloof, because of course war is hell, whenever we see videos of the Ukrainians doing anything, they make war look fun. They just make it look like it's full of jokes and stuff like that. And that's not actually the case. Of course, war is hell on earth for the most part. It's pretty rough, especially if you're a civilian. You get caught in the middle of both sides, but really not in this case. You're really just caught, in the Russian line of fire. But still, the Ukrainians always look like they're having a blast with everything they do. We never really see them low in spirit, and so it's still great to see that the Ukrainian artillery is hammering away at them, and the crews are happier than ever, I guess you could say. So with that, we're now going to move further down the line, and we're now going to move into the Popasna area and also the Luhansk area behind the lines. Starting off today, we've actually seen the Ukrainians knock out a tank in the Kamyshuvaka village. Now, this was something new to me, and this is huge news that people need to focus on, because the Ukrainians did not control this village 2 days ago. This was actually a Russian-controlled village, and now we can see the Ukrainians in it and fighting for it. Now, I don't want to give away Ukrainian operational security, just in case if I'm right, but it seems like they have a plan here, and it looks like a good one. I'm not going to go into it, but it's looking very good. But we can see here that the Ukrainians are pulling some real commando-style stuff here. With a firefight going on in the background, they climb on top of this Russian T-80BV and drop a grenade down one of the open hatches and destroys it. So here's the video. We can hear the firefight going on in the background. One of the crew members is dropping a grenade down the hatch. He hops off the tank. They run off. And you can see that the grenade blew up in the hatch, and it's now caused enough damage inside the tank that it most likely won't be operational. I don't know about y'all, and excuse my language, but that video was badass. Let's go back and watch that one more time, because that was a cool video. I just gotta say, this is my favorite video of the entire war. Everything about this is a go-get-'em kind of thing. There's a firefight going on in the background. The Ukrainians are whipping the Russians. Meanwhile, they're climbing on top of an abandoned Russian tank in the middle of the village and throwing a grenade down the turret to blow the thing up and disable it. There is so much going on in this video, and it's all good for the Ukrainians, that this has got to be my favorite video. It puts a huge smile on my face to see that these guys are just impressive. I mean, like, we never see the Russians do anything like this on film. Only in Ukraine will you see the Ukrainians hauling butt when dealing with the Russians, and this has got to be the best video I've seen so far. So I just gotta say, really impressive to me, really cool, and it's great to know that the Ukrainians, of course, are pushing the Russians back a pretty good deal, and they have managed to retake a village near Popasna. With that, we're now going to move further down the Popasna, I guess you could say, finger, and we're now going to see that Terminators have arrived in the Popasna pocket. Not only are they around Severodonetsk, but they're now also right near Popasna. Here's a video of these BMP2 Terminators in the bushes.
Assalamu alaikum!
Pretty interesting to see. Of course, I always want to negate, as much as possible, the fear factor of a BMP2 Terminator. A lot of people are pretty freaked out about these tanks, but they are literally just heavily armored BMP2Ms in terms of their firepower. Yes, they have two 30mm autocannons of the two A42 design, while a BMP2 only has one, but beyond that, they're literally identical. The only difference in between the two is that a BMP2 Terminator uses a different turret and a different hull. And the hull for the BMPT, that's a tongue twister, Terminators that are being used right now is actually the T-72 hull. And so these things have the same armor protection as all of the T-72s that we've already seen get destroyed in Ukraine. So these things are not heavily protected. They're not heavy, they're not more armored than what we've already seen before. These are literally just, I guess you could say, kind of like souped up armored personnel carriers, if you wanted to call them that. Or, well, not really armored personnel carriers, they don't carry any infantry, but in terms of their firepower, they're souped up, heavily armored personnel carriers, or they're very low firepower kind of main battle tanks. Either way you look at them, it's an interesting looking tank. It looks cool, but the effectiveness of it is questionable, and also the armor qualities on it are negligible, at least because we've already seen Stugnas, in-lost javelins, and every other kind of weapon system that the Ukrainians have fielded knocking out T-72s already. So don't really have high hopes for these things, don't really think they're going to do much, but I do have to admit, got to give them a little bit of credit, they are very cool looking. With that, we're now going to be moving further behind the lines onto the onto the Luhansk side, where today we've seen that a Russian ammo depot was destroyed by Ukrainian fire. This ammo depot was actually in the middle of some commie blocks inside of a city in Luhansk, and we can see the Ukrainians knocking it out with nearly perfectly dead-on aimed artillery. You can see the first two shots hit the building directly, the third shot hit it, the fourth shot missed a little. We now see the fifth shot getting a little bit closer. We can now see the sixth shot hitting the ammo depot dead on. And we can now see all the subsequent shots hitting dead on the mark and taking out this ammo depot. Wonderful to see that the Ukrainian artillery is hitting the ammo depots dead on. Of course, this affects Russia's supply a great deal, and that is something that they certainly do not have a, guess you say, luxury of losing in this war, as their supplies are already dwindling and incredibly weakly reinforced. They almost have no logistics to speak of, which is usually a historical Russian failing. The Russians never really focus on logistics, and if you look through the entire course of history, in World War II, they had massive problems with logistics, to the point that soldiers were having to wear wooden boxes as shoes at some points in the earlier part of World War II. But at the same time, the Russian factories were producing hundreds of thousands of brand new boots and shoes, but there was no way to get them to the front lines to these soldiers. That's the problems that the Russians have always been facing, and for some reason, over the course of around 70 to 80 years at this point, they've never fixed the problem yet. And it's really something stupid when you think about it. You would think that some general in charge in Russia or the Soviet Union would have gone, logistics is a failing of our military, we really need to improve this. But they never did. So with that, we're now going to be moving on to our last video, where we can see that apparently there's a little bit of a strife in between the DPR and LPR troops, as some DPR troops were transferred to Luhansk and then told that they are now volunteers of the Luhansk army, and they are refusing to fight under the flag of the Luhansk People's Republic. So here's the video of them refusing to fight. It's really interesting, and we also have Grumpy from Snow White and the Seven Dwarves telling us the news that they will not fight. Here's the video.
Понимаешь? Дорогие уважаемые сограждане ДНР, мы военнослужащие 107-й стрелкового полка, 4-й батальон, 3-я, 2-я и 4-я роты, 204 человека. Отказываемся ехать на убой в ЛНР, совсем другую республику. С нами были проведены масса незаконных действий. Нас призвали незаконно в нарушение приказа. С нами не было проведено медицинского обследования во время призыва. Нас неоднократно обманывали и обманом пытались завести на территорию ЛНР, где по неподтвержденным данным мы уже являемся частью какого-то казачества, добровольно вступившие в ряды вооруженных сил ЛНР, и бессрочно, бессеребренниками будем там умирать. А умереть там недолго. 3 месяца.
Now, this was an important line right here. I was going to not interrupt it until this point, but this guy just said it doesn't take long for us to die. They already realize that the casualty rates in their forces are unbelievably high, to the point that it's almost suicidal for them to really do anything. And so they're not wanting to die under the flag of the Luhansk Republic. They would rather be thrown into the meat grinder under the Donetsk flag instead. So while they're not necessarily mutinying to fight, they're really mutinying who they've been put under command of. So I think, honestly, the Russians may not arrest these guys, or, you know, the DPR and LPR may not arrest these guys. They may go, okay, well, you got a point. You can go back to the DPR, and then they'll most likely move this front into, like, a punitive position, like having them fight at Marinka or Avdiivka, where they'll most likely just get mowed down. But still, it's interesting to see these guys almost pulling off, like, a labor union kind of strike. You know, they're listing off their points and kind of like an itinerary, and they're sitting there like, we're not going to fight. The working conditions aren't great. It's kind of weird to see, but anyways, I'm going to let the video continue.
3 месяца мы вели бои за освобождение Мариуполя. Мариуполь освобожден, но пушечным мясом мы быть не хотим. В очередной раз нас обманом пытаются завести от 21-й шахты в городе Ханжонково, где нас ждут представители от кабинета Пушилина, где должны выслушать все наши законные требования, где должны мы написать даже военной прокуратуре объяснительные и отчеты о незаконных действиях и нарушениях нашего командования. Здесь наши жены, матеря.
Now, you know it's serious when they bring their wives and their mothers, because the mothers are going to give these military lawyers and military commanders hell. For some reason, that's kind of how, I guess you could say, Slavic cultures in general work, is that when the women get involved and they start, like, heckling the military commanders as well, or anyone in power, things are getting very serious at that point. That just seems to be the trend. So you know it's getting serious when they're bringing their wives and their mothers along to give the commanders a piece of their mind as well.
Надеюсь, ваша поддержка тоже с нами. В раме есть пленный человек, который был в плену свыше 2 месяцев.
That's the end of the video, but we can see clearly that these soldiers are not happy with being lied to and swindled to be switched from the DPR army to the LPR army and enlisted as volunteers, Cossack volunteers. Apparently, they believe that they're about to be put in the line of fire to be mowed down like a bunch of, I guess you could call it, lambs, pretty much, and they're not happy with that whatsoever. Of course, they're going to get mowed down like sheep wherever they go, whether they are in the DPR army or the LPR army, but apparently they take great offense to the LPR being over them and pretty much using them as, you know, fodder. So, very interesting scene is showing that there are decent amounts of, I guess you could say, rifts happening in the Russian militaries, or the pro-Russian forces, as a decent amount of units are now starting to refuse to fight. And largely, we're seeing the DPR units and the LPR units refusing to fight and also being heavily demoralized. And I think that's starting to show that there has been a massive disconnect in between what the Russians are saying the DPR and LPR like, and what the actual citizens of the DPR and LPR want and wish for. Because we're seeing that a lot of them aren't exactly happy at all with what they're doing. They're dressed in rags, have nearly no equipment, and they're incredibly demoralized to the point that any small, I guess you could say, change to what they were thinking it was going to be like causes them to outright refuse to fight and mutiny. So with that, we have now covered all of the northern Donbass news, the Kharkiv news, and also the Moscow news. So before we move on to the southern front news, the little bit of international news, and finally our speech from Zelensky, we're going to answer another 3 questions from the chat, and then we're going to move on to the southern front news and the speech from Zelensky, and then return to the question segment. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so first up from the Super Chats, we have a $200 donation from Steve2848. And thank you very much, Steve. That is tremendous. Thank you very much. He says, remind people to press the like button. I know you hate to solicit, but it costs nothing and helps the channel. Congratulations on 100 days of such hard but appreciated work.
Well, thank you so much, Steve, for the appreciated $200 in support. That's the largest that we've had in an incredibly long time, and I have to thank you so much once again for sending in that kind of support. It helps out our channel a massive deal, and you've been trying to support our channel for the past 2 weeks nearly, to an unbelievable degree. And I have to thank you so much for the support. It helps out our channel to untold ends, and so I thank you so much for the support. Also, it appears that Steve is trying to solicit for the channel instead of me, but yes, if y'all would like to hit the like button, it does help us out a huge deal and helps us to reach more people, which can help us to do better on the Sunday fundraisers. Unbelievably, our subscriber counts over the past few days have been going up and up. I don't know why. We're doing the same thing that we've normally been doing, but apparently a lot more people are liking it at this point. I don't know why. But I do thank you so much for the support, Steve. And yes, if everyone would like to hit the like button, it helps us out to an untold degree to spread this news on further. And so if you appreciate what we do and you would like to support this channel, make sure to slam that like button. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Steve. The support is massive, and it helps us out a huge deal. And I can't thank all of our super chatters enough, especially you, Steve, for the massive amount of support you've given us tonight. And with that, I thank you so much once again. Cannot thank you enough. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a super chat from John Servey, who puts in a $100 donation, and he does not leave a comment.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, John. I can't believe you didn't leave a comment, because while the super chats, of course, are really just to support the channel, and you could throw in a question and I can try and answer it, I like to think that people ask questions, so that way I can at least try and give something for the support rather than just the stream alone. But I do thank you so much for the support. Every bit of support helps out our channel a massive degree, and I'm very appreciative to everyone who gives a bit to support this channel. Of course, that's not a bit, that's a lot. So I thank you very much for the support once again. It means so much to us. And so with that, I thank you so much, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $51 donation from Andrew Zaru, who also does not leave a comment.
Well, I thank you very much for the support. Of course, it helps out the channel a great deal, and we're always very appreciative to everyone who puts in some support. Unfortunately, we haven't really had a lot of questions here. Of course, I like to answer people's questions, and so we're going to move on to the next one. Hopefully there's a question in it, but that may be the last one of this little segment, and then we're going to move back on to the Southern Front news.
And our final one of this segment comes from one of our channel regulars, Mycroft, who puts in a $100 donation and says, "Slava Ukraine, peace and love to all."
Well, I thank you so much for the support, Mycroft. You've been around as well, helping out this channel a lot, and you're also a longtime viewer. And so I thank you. I thank you so much for the support, and also Slava Ukraini, Rom Slava, and also peace to you as well. And I thank you so much for the support, and I thank everyone so much for the massive amount of supports we've gotten tonight. It does help out this channel a great deal, and it helps us to keep on running. And so with that, we're now going to move on to the Southern Front news, the international news, and wrap up with a speech from President Zelensky. And then we are going to revisit all of the super chats we've gotten tonight and answer every single one of them. And then after that, we are going to go on and let me think. For some reason, I'm drawing a gap. We're also going to answer questions from the live chat as well. I just want everyone to know, once again, you don't have to put in a super chat to get a question answered. You can just @Enforcer or @Enforcer Matt in the chat and ask a question, and you may be one of the people who gets it answered near the end of the stream. And so with that, this question segment is now over, and we're now going to continue on with our Southern Front news and wrap up our news segment for the night before we get into the question segment as a whole. So with that, we're now going to move on into the area of Orlivka, where today we've seen a very low-flying Ka-52 attack conducted by the Russians. When you see the Ka-52 in the distance, this is flying in between the hills. You could see the shadow was really close below the helicopter, which is telling us how low they're flying. Probably only about 100 to 150 feet off the ground. That's the end of the video, but of course, wonderful to see that, well, not wonderful to see, sorry, for some reason I was getting confused there. I thought we were on the next clip that I'm thinking about in advance. It's interesting to see that the Russians, of course, are using Ka-52s over the Donbass still, because we do know that the air defenses are pretty strong. Sorry about that. For some reason, I was thinking about the next video we're going to watch, which is the Ukrainian artillery obliterating some Russians, and I was sitting there thinking in advance, because I always try and make sure that I have an idea of what I'm saying next, so sorry for the slip up there. But we can see the two Ka-52s, of course, were flying incredibly low over the area near the Donbass. We didn't see them shoot off any rockets in the video, so we don't know where they're heading or what they're going to attack, but we do largely know at this point that the Russians are not using any kind of guided munitions from their helicopters, as largely unguided rockets as a whole. So we'll have to wait and see if we get any more videos or information about those two Ka-52s, and hopefully we get some news in the future that they have been shot down. With that, we're now going to be moving even further down the front and past the Orlivka area, where today we can see that there was a fire that broke out in Donetsk, and this was actually the video that I was thinking about inside my head. We can see that a fire is broken out in the Budanovsky district of the city of Donetsk. We're actually about to visit that specific part of the city and see if we can take a look at it on the ground and what it looked like before the Ukrainians hit this military unit that's been sandwiched in between some apartment buildings. Now it's going to take us to the next one. But we can see here that a fire is billowing, and you can see a little bit of it down there in the bottom. And we can get a good idea that it was most likely a small little Russian unit that was sitting amongst these apartment blocks that got slammed by the artillery. So for those of y'all who do not know, because I actually did not know where this spot is in the town of Donetsk, this is the Budanovsky district of the city. So we're actually going to pull that up on Google Maps. Well, actually, we're going to pull up Donetsk city, so that way it doesn't throw me to where I live. But here's Donetsk city, and here's the Budanovsky district. So let's look at this in satellite view. It appears to be much like the rest of Donetsk city. Wow, Donetsk actually has a pretty big arena there in the middle of the city. Once again, it was one of the larger cities before 2014. And we can also see the Donetsk airport, which you can actually see on satellite view is destroyed still, which is very interesting. You can actually see the remnants of where the actual gates used to be. Don't see any destroyed aircraft there. But I'm sure if we look around hard enough, there are some destroyed aircraft out there on that tarmac, at least in one spot. But you can still see the scars of battle out here on the very outskirts of town. It's honestly unbelievable. You can see all the destroyed houses here, because this is actually where the front line is, and it's been for almost 8 years. And it's unbelievable. It's crazy. Look. You can see a little bit of damage to the top of these buildings. If we go further out here to Pisky, you can see the trench works of both sides. And you can see this on Google Maps. Honestly, unbelievable. And they've been at war for 8 years. But anyways, we're now going to go back down to the Budanovsky area, and we're going to see if we get any satellite pictures of what this place looks like. It looks like even Google Maps, which has taken satellite, actually street view videos of everywhere in Donetsk city, wouldn't even dare go into the Budanovsky district themselves. So we're going to drop down on this little picture over here and see what we can get here. So we have a severed ear. It appears that the Russians are committing war crimes against the citizens of Donetsk. Of course, I'm just joking. But we can see that this guy took a picture under a railway bridge. What a weird place to take a picture. Let's see if we can find a better one. We're just going to get on the street. It's as close as we can get to the district without actually being in it. And we can see that the roads, this was actually taken in 2011, so it was 3 years before this became a breakaway area. But we can see that the road, at least the sidewalks heading to the commie blocks, were in somewhat poor shape. This is, of course, kind of normal, though. You know, while Ukraine is fighting incredibly hard, they've never really been the wealthiest country on Earth. But we can see that it is just kind of a normal-looking Ukrainian town, honestly. So we can see that some Russian units were, of course, sandwiched in between some apartment blocks down there in the Budanovsky district, and were wiped out by the Ukrainian artillery. So now it's time for me to pull out the card where I say it's incredible to see that the Ukrainians are managing to hit Russian units deep within the area of Donetsk city, even near the further southeastern side of the suburbs. It looks like we have some HD XYZ in the chat. I'm actually going to get rid of that one, Matthew. I'd like to execute that one. We got rid of it. Good. And so with that, we're now going to move out of the Donetsk area, and we're now going to move to Bryansk, where we could see a second perspective today of the Ukrainians blowing up something at Bryansk port. We're not really sure what they blew this up with, or how, or what was blown up. We don't know the answer to any of these questions, But we can see here that something did blow up at the port, and these folks taking the film apparently got a pretty good laugh out of it. Here's the video. I think that these are the Ukrainian citizens, of course. I don't think that they're shipping in Russians here yet. These Ukrainians are getting a pretty good laugh, probably out of watching the Russians get bested at what they believed was their own game. Because either that was an attack from saboteurs, that was Russian negligence causing the explosion, or it was an attack by some kind of Ukrainian ordnance. I'm not really sure. I'm most likely leaning towards the first two, but it's incredibly funny to see that the civilian reaction to this explosion is to just burst out laughing at this thing. Oh, look, we've got another one. Matthew, good lord, we've got a lot of these things tonight, don't we?
Yeah, I have no idea why they're getting in here and subscribing, apparently.
Yeah, that's wild. But anyways, of course, they're laughing at it, and I can't blame them. If I saw the occupiers of my city getting blasted in the middle of the day or killing themselves with their own stupidity, I would, of course, get a pretty good chuckle out of it as well. With that, we're now going to be moving on out of the port of Bryansk, which, of course, has always been an area of great hilarity as far as the Russians have well, as far as the Ukrainians have been concerned, as far as the Russians have been concerned, it's been nothing but a cursed port and a port of sorrows, as everything they try and do there ends up blowing up. With that, we're now going to move on to the Kherson area, where today we've only gotten one bit of news. We haven't gotten a lot of news of the Kherson finger as of late, but we do know that the Ukrainians are still conducting counterattacks in the area. But we could see today that the 14th Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces did hit a Russian tank with a Stuken, of course. We could see them eyeballing the vehicle in the distance with the Stuken interface. And then they hit it, and it was wiped out. We can now see the vehicle scooting on along in the drone view after being hit. And it looks like... Golly, that was loud at the end. That scared me. But it looks like that little truck was sizzling. So it's great to see that the Ukrainians, of course, are destroying more units in the south. It does let us know, although we don't get a lot of news there, that the Ukrainians are still inflicting a decent amount of casualties on the Russians and are pushing them back. So, of course, wonderful to see. And with that, we're now going to move out of the country into the United States. A lot of people have been wondering, especially me, I don't know about other people, but I've been wondering, where is the Javelin customer support service line? Because while the Javelins are getting sent over to Ukraine, there's no one to tell them how to use them if they ever have any problems with that. Let's go to this guy in Washington State. Apparently, he is the sole Javelin support team, and Ukrainians can call this guy up for some tech support. So according to this article here, a Ukrainian guardsman, apparently a Ukrainian soldier, called up a Washington State National Guard soldier, called a guardsman, and asked him how to guide him through using a javelin, because apparently he was having some trouble with it. So the guardsman troubleshooted the issue, and 30 minutes later, he got a call from the very same guardsman telling them that he took out a Russian vehicle thanks to his advice. And so we have found the Javelin Tech Support Team. They're apparently in Washington State. I'm not really sure where Apple is staged. Of course, I think Apple's headquarters is in Silicon Valley in California, but close enough. Most of the tech companies are from the West Coast. And so it looks like Javelin Tech Support is going to become one of those next startup tech companies that will start making its name known in the future. So with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of news from the United States, where we've heard today in Washington from an official report that 45,000 Americans have signed up to take in Ukrainian refugees. I don't know how many refugees would be assigned to these families per piece, but 45,000 Americans stepping up to take in refugees is a pretty decent number, and it does show that there's a large amount of people who believe in the cause of Ukraine so much and do, I guess you could say, sympathize with the Ukrainians and their plight, that they're willing to take on refugees and help them out during these times of need. Of course, the article just describes that in more detail. If you would like to read it in depth, there is a link to the map in the description below that you can go check out and click on all these markers yourselves. And so with that, wonderful to see that the United States is still supporting Ukraine in every way it can, including the civilians taking initiatives themselves, much like me with the fundraisers and all of y'all with helping me out with those fundraisers. And so with that, it is now time for us to return all the way back to Kiev, all the way back to where we heard the first explosions rock this nation 100 days ago at the same time of night that I'm on this stream right now. And that's another thing to remember. The first stream I ever ran on this war actually started at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And ever since then, every single day, I've literally covered the next 24 hours of the war, starting from hour 1. And it's really crazy to me to think that I've been here since the start. I've been literally covering the news of this major historical war from start to finish. And I mean, like, oh, and I was thinking about it. What's weird is that while the news is not perfectly accurate all the time, of course, there's a few discrepancies here and there, although for the large part, it's incredibly accurate. People are going to be looking back on these videos in the future, maybe, and they're going to be seeing all the questions that people are asking. They're going to see what the major public opinion was like when the Russian soldiers were outside of Kiev. Is Kiev going to fall? What's going to happen here? What about the 40-mile-long convoy? And you can literally track what people were thinking, worrying about, and what was going on in this war every single day through this stream. And I honestly think that this may be one of the most interesting things that I'll have ever done in my life, and something that a lot of people can look back on in the future and literally watch this war unfold day by day, location by location, and what everyone was thinking around the world all the time. And so with that, we're going to go to one of the new traditions on this channel. It's been around for about a month at this point, but it hasn't been around as long as the streams have been. But we're going to, of course, round out the news segment before we move on to our question segment with the speech from President Zelensky today on this very important day, day 100 of the war, the 3rd of June in 2022. Here's the video of the speech from President Zelensky today on day 100.
Великий народе великої України. Рівно 100 днів тому всі ми прокинулись в іншій реальності. Рівно 100 днів тому прокинулись інші ми. Коли українців будить не промінь сонця, а вибухи ракет, які влучають в наші домівки, тоді прокидаються зовсім інші українці. У 2014 році Росія прийшла до нас з одним словом, з новим словом. І це слово «війна». 24 лютого Росія додала до цього слова ще одне, зробивши словосполучення «повномасштабна війна». І протягом 100 днів ми знаходили, чи отримували, бачили, чи хотіли стерти ще інші слова. Їх небагато, вони різні, але відображають, що ми пережили. Серед цих слів є і нові для нас, і ті, які були забуті ще нашими батьками, але які довелось згадати нам. Добре відомі кожному на планеті, і ті, які усім людям доводиться із жахом запам'ятовувати. Болючі слова, і ті, які дійсно дають нам надію. Усі важливі, усі буде правильним згадати саме сьогодні. 100 днів, 100 слів. Перш за все, це 2 слова. Наші герої. Тобто, перш за все, люди, які від ночі на 24 лютого і до сьогодні боронять нашу державу. А далі українські слова. Паляниця, Збройні сили, Стугна, Козак, Зміїний. І, звичайно, Чорнобаївка. Це одне слово, яке звучало вже багато-багато разів, і в якому видно усе і про наш спротив, і про наших ворогів. А ще іноземні слова, які стали рідними для України. Байрактар, Гарпун, Хаймарс, Старлінг, Жешов і, звичайно, Ленд-ліз. Ще одне слово. Всього лише одне, але яке відображає 100 днів боротьби, 100 днів дипломатії, 100 днів підтримки. І слово, яке відображає дещо важливе у нашому характері, саме в українському характері. Джавеліни, які викликали страх у ворогів, бо вони не чекали, що їх не врятує броня. А потім і посмішку. Нашу посмішку, коли українці намалювали ще й святу Джавелін. Ну і слово, за яке всі всі в Україні підіймають келих. Нептун. Щодня у нас з'являлись слова, які для кожного і кожної тепер значно більше, ніж просто слова. Важкі слова. Гостомель, Бородянка, Охтирка, Чернігів, Харків, Херсон, Ізюм, Мелітополь, Маріуполь і Азовсталь. А разом з ними армія, арта, морпіхи, прикордонники, розвідка, нацгвардійці, поліція, тероборона, авіація, наші героїчні льотчики. А також слово «привид». Привид Києва, який знищував ворогів і залишався живим. Всі ці слова ми могли і не чути стільки разів за все наше життя, скільки чуємо за ці 100 днів. І щоразу, коли ми їх чуємо, знаємо, саме вони дають нам час і можливість жити. Жити стільки, скільки нам відведено. Відведено Богом, а не ворогом. Боже, це слово, це звертання. Воно звучало не раз і завжди особливо. Були і слова, які наш ворог хотів стерти. Волноваха і Салтівка, Попасна і Сєвєродонецьк. Це слова, які ми обов'язково напишемо знову, але по-нашому. Так само, як Бучу і як Маріуполь. І ми напишемо їх обов'язково поруч зі словом «трибунал». Щоб інші слова – фільтрація, депортація, катування, розстріл, коврове бомбардування, ракетний удар – обов'язково отримали відповідь. Відповідь всього лиш з одного слова – справедливість. Справедливість, яка стане крапкою після тимчасових для нас слів. Окупація, Мордор, орки. Звичайно, вони підуть з нашого лексикону. Ми їх точно виженемо з нашої землі. Були й слова, які давали надію, і за які ми боролися особливо. Гуманітарні коридори, які стали дорогою життя для сотень тисяч людей. І які дозволили побороти ще одне слово, страшне слово блокада. Від першого дня з нами залишаються слова, між якими дистанція, як між темрявою і світлом. Одного слова ми уникаємо, це слово біженці, а за допомогою іншого слова віримо, що у мільйонів наших людей є майбутнє. Воно буде вдома в Україні. І це слово переселенці. Багато що змінилось. Коли чуємо слово «патрон», згадуємо найвідомішого сапера України. А коли чуємо «марафон», розуміємо, що це зовсім не про спорт. І, звичайно, у наш лексикон привнесли дуже багато смертельно небезпечних слів. Того, що жоден українець і жодна українка ніколи не хотіли бачити, і чим жодна нормальна людина не може гордитися. Іскандери, калібри, санцепьоки, фосфорні бомби та інше. Чомусь не побачили їхнього хваленого танку «Армата». Думаю, вони побоялися нашого нового словосполучення «тракторні війська». І ще одне словосполучення варто згадати. Друга армія світу. Спочатку воно виглядало загрозливо, потім небезпечно. Після Бучі викликало тільки відразу, а зараз хіба що гірку усмішку. Бо що залишилось від неї, від армії, яку називали Другою армією світу? Воєнні злочини, ганьба і ненависть, і цифри. Цифри замість слів. Коли бачиш щоранку число загиблих, число поранених, кількість обстрілів, кількість ракет, коли поруч зі словом «діти» щоранку нова цифра. Сьогодні 261. Вже 261 дитину убило російське вторгнення. Заради чого? Немає таких слів, які можуть дати відповідь на це запитання. З'явились слова, які тепер дуже часті, які звучать щоденно. Але ми маємо зробити так, щоб для наших дітей вони вже не означали того, що вони значать сьогодні для нас. Щоб вони їх могли сприймати лише як історію. Передусім це слово руїни, але також сирена, повітряна тривога, комендантська година, блокпост, колючий дріт і слово міни. Буде ще багато слів, які знатиме кожен, які матимуть сенс для кожного і які дадуть шанс мільйонам. Це слова відбудова, кандидатство і членство, гарантії і безпека, і обов'язково слово повернення. Звичайно, на основі слова, яке було мрією, а стане реальністю – звільнення. Це слова нашого майбутнього, це слова про те, що ми зробимо з тою нашою червоною калиною, з нашою славною Україною. Слова про те, куди прямує і завжди прямуватиме ворожий воєнний корабль, про те, що робити з окупантами, коли хтось каже «Вова». І, звичайно, наше вже народне «Доброго вечора, ми з України». З тієї України, де розквітає поле, а вона сивіє. З тієї України, яка стоїть, стоятиме і буде стояти. України, чия не вмерла ще слава і воля. України, якій ми кажемо слава. Слава Україні, слава нації і кожному відоме продовження. Смерть ворога. Бо є 3 слова, задля яких протягом вже 100 днів, після 8 років, ми боремось. Мир, перемога, Україна. Слава Україні!
And with that, that was the end of Zelensky's incredible speech today about all the words that have become common in Ukraine, the words he hopes will become the future of Ukraine, and hopefully what they can lay out for their children in the future for these words to become the past and history to them and their future generations. And with that, that wraps up our news segment for the day, and we'll now be going into the question segment here on Day 100. Before we actually move on to our questions, I would like to, of course, note and say that it has been one hell of a journey for me. It's been one hell of a journey for all of y'all. And I have to say, once again, I am more than honored that I've been able to sit here every single day at my computer and report the news every single day without fail, except for Mondays, and cover exactly everything that's happened over the front lines and, of course, deliver the good news, the bad news, and everything in between. So with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching these streams. And with that, we're now going to move on to our first question of this ongoing question segment that will go for the rest of the night.
And moving on to our question segment here, I want to revisit one super chat that we had earlier from Andrew Zaru. He actually had a question, but he forgot to put it in with the super chat, so we're going to go over that one right now. He says, I put in my question incorrectly. Can you find out of the 20% of Ukraine that is occupied by Russia, what percent is 2014 and what percent is 2022?
I believe I actually don't know the percentage. Let me pull up what percentage of land does Russia control in Ukraine. One day ago, they controlled 20% of Ukraine. Let's see. 20%. Trying to sit here and think, how much Ukraine has Russia taken over? What percentage of Ukraine? 2014. Let's see if we can get a number from 2014. It doesn't really look like it's going to give us an honest figure of what the pre-war number was. So sadly, I can't give you a comparison of what they control now versus what they used to control, but I can tell you that the current number, 20%, has to be combining the former Crimean Peninsula, well, the Crimean Peninsula, and also the DPR and LPR, because there's no way that this amount of extra land is accounting for literally 20% of Ukraine. If you look at the map, there's no way that just these additional bits are 20% on their own. It would have to include the DPR and LPR and Crimea. So if I had to give you a ballpark estimate, I would say that the areas in red probably account for 12% to 10% if I was to give you like a ballpark figure. But I do, once again, thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. Unfortunately, we can't get a like very batten down hardcore number or any kind of math that we can do to figure out how much this new terrain is worth, but I hope that does answer the question at least vaguely, and take it with a grain of salt because I could be wrong with that approximate percentage estimate. And so with that, we're moving on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $50 donation from Vern, who is a longtime channel viewer, who says, I joined on day 18. I haven't missed a night since, and thank you. My question is, what do you know about Ukrainian top military commanders? Who are some of the key ones, and how did they get so good at countering Russia?
Well, I thank you so much for the support. Also, it's great to hear that you've been watching for a long amount of time, but I've never heard you super chat before. And so it's very cool to, of course, have you supporting the channel and also enjoying it that much. And it's really cool to hear you've been watching since day 18. You've been watching for over 82 days at this point. So welcome to the Army. You're apparently one of the more seasoned veterans here. But to answer that question, I'm not really sure who the Ukrainian military commanders are, and I'm sure there's a lot of them. Of course, we could pull up the Ukrainian armed forces, and I'm sure that they would tell us who some of the higher ranking people in the military are. Let's see here. Supreme Commander, of course, is Volodymyr Zelensky. The Minister of Defense is Oleksiy Reznikov, which is actually that guy who's standing behind Zelensky in the video on day 2 and day 100. And we can also see the Commander-in-Chief. Not the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. The Supreme Commander-in-Chief is Volodymyr Zelensky. But the Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Army is Valery Zaluzhny. And it appears that he's still in that position according to Wikipedia. And he's been in that position since the 27th of July, 2021. So those two guys, I guess you could say, are right below Zelensky in terms of their military leadership. And I'm not really sure. We're actually going to look at the Commander-in-Chief's biography here real quick. Let's see. Let's see his story. He later entered the military. He graduated with honors, after which he passed all stages of military service: platoon commander training, platoon commander, combat platoon commander. So apparently he's got some pretty on-the-ground experience. He was a platoon commander, which is one of these smaller units that one can control in the field. A platoon these days in the U.S. military would most likely be controlled by a lieutenant. I think its squad is actually controlled by a second lieutenant, so I believe that a platoon would maybe be commanded by a first lieutenant. I'm not entirely sure about that in terms of Western doctrine, but we can see that this guy started from the bottom and climbed his way to the top. Of course, in 1997, and moving on from that all the way up to 2014, Ukraine wasn't really getting a lot of combat experience. Of course, they sent out UN peacekeepers to multiple different countries, but whether that actually applies as by and large combat experience and whether he was involved in it is another question. In 2005, he entered the National Academy of Defense. He graduated with a gold medal and was appointed Chief of Staff and First Deputy Commander of the 24th Separate Mechanized Brigade, which is currently fighting on the front right now in Yavoriv and Lviv. He served in that position 2017. He became the first deputy commander of the Operational Command West. So apparently, this is a new thing that the Ukrainians were doing once they were trying to westernize, as they started to divide Ukraine up into new military districts, and Operational Command West was the one he was put in, which makes a lot of sense since he has a history, of course, being in the West. Yavoriv is in the Lviv Oblast. Let's see, in 2021, Zelensky appointed him to his current position. He is called one of the most open-minded generals who understands the problems of soldiers and junior officers. As a representative of Ukrainian senior officers and participant in the hostilities in the Donbass who did not serve in the USSR, he has a positive attitude to the renewal of personnel by young people and the departure from Soviet practices. One of his first steps in office was to allow the military at the front to open fire in response to the occupiers without the consent of the top leadership and eliminate the need for the military to fill out unnecessary documents. So this man And his whole entire thing is screw traditions and screw paperwork. Let's just do what we need to do. So that appears to be this guy's running motto, and that may be why the Ukrainians are doing so much better than the Russians, because this guy is like, screw the paper trails and screw the traditions, just get the job done. And that's really the best way to operate a military, is trying to put everything to the wayside and just going with the most effective strategy. A lot of people say that there is an honorable way to fight. But as far as regarding civilians, there is an honorable way to fight, which is not directly targeting civilians or not trying to, of course, incur them as collateral casualties. But beyond that, when fighting other soldiers on the other side, there is not necessarily, per se, an honorable thing. Like, shooting someone in the back is acceptable. If they're running away and retreating, that's something that's fine. And it appears that this guy is like, I don't care what happens. If you get shot at and you need to shoot back at him, just start shooting back at him. No paperwork involved, which may be why the Ukrainians were winning. So in short, you can see right there from that one-man story of the commander-in-chief of Ukraine that appears to be the reason why the Ukrainians are winning, because he's just down to getting to business and putting tradition to the side if it means being more successful. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question, at least in a way. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
All right, and just a quick heads up, we do have about 40 super chats to get to tonight and quite a few live chat questions. So everybody please stick with us, and we're going to get to them as fast as we can. So next up, we have a $50 donation from Sweet Walt, who says, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but Enforcer, I'm going to put it in the chat so you can see it. This person defended liberty and democracy, and although Zelensky doesn't want any statues, I think he deserves as many as that person that I put in the chat.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I also, unfortunately, have to say I don't know that guy in particular. Of course, I don't really focus on a lot of normal individuals in this war, and so sadly, I don't really know enough about that guy to comment on him. But of course, a lot of heroes in Ukraine deserve statues. Like, there's one that a lot of people have forgotten, and I'm just going to cover this one and move on because we have got a lot to cover, and they're still rolling in, and it's unbelievable because they're coming in and they are rolling for sure. But there was a guy down here near the Bucha Hospital European area, and he actually blew up the bridge right here that pretty much led the Russians straight into Kiev, and he sacrificed his life to blow up that bridge. And I forgot his name. Actually, I didn't really know his name from the start. I never was able to actually find a good source for his name. But still, I think that man deserves some statues as well for his honorable sacrifice and trying to make sure that his whole entire nation may survive just due to his single death. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the question in a way. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And I just have to say really quickly, holy cow. Thank you to everybody that has been supporting us via Super Chat tonight. Y'all have been absolutely incredible in the donations tonight. We have to say thank you so very much for that. That is insane.
I have to say, too, I mean, like, honestly, I'll just say I saw two $100 super chats come in one after the other. I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I'm really in disbelief right now. This is unbelievable. But with that, we're going to move on to the next question so that way we can recognize each and every one of you and try and answer the questions y'all have. And so with that, we're on to the next question.
All right, and up next here we have a $100 donation from Steve2848, who says, "Okay, I have to say, I throw shade at the Brits all the time, but I was living in London during the 2005 bombings. That stiff upper lip, they got it, and it will make you respect them. Same with the Ukrainians."
Yes, I do have to agree. I have been to Britain on occasion. Of course, very rare. Actually, last time I went was like 4 years ago, but it was an incredibly cool trip. Got to see how British people live, which is really different than America. In America, usually people go for the house first and then they get the car. In Britain, it seemed to be the opposite way around. People went for a luxury car first and then they would start working on getting a bigger house. Or maybe it's just because the housing market over there is so messed up you really can't get a big house unless if you are literally like a billionaire, because that's kind of a housing issue that they're having over there right now. But still, it was very interesting to go over to Britain and see what British culture is actually like. And I have to say, it's pretty cool, really. I mean, like, you know, I'm a big fan of all kinds of cultures, and I think that It's a wonderful thing that people always try and make sure that their traditions and culture stays alive around the entirety of the world. And so I do have to say that they definitely do have some stoicism and a stiff upper lip to them. And we do see that coming from the Ukrainians as well. And we can see that they continue to soldier on and even have a good bit of gaffes as they go and a lot of fun with it. So with that, I thank you so much once again, Steve, for the massive amount of support. It's unbelievable how much support we've gotten tonight on day 100. And so I thank you all so much once again, and especially you, Steve. I think that's the second time you've put in a super chat like that tonight. And of course, it always helps our channel to keep on running. And so I got to thank you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $100 donation from one of our channel regulars, BC Skyman, who says, congratulations, $100 for 100 days. Enforcer and Enforcer Matt are doing a fabulous job. Thanks you for all the support of Ukraine, my wife's native country. I was watching the movie 1944 when my wife came down and told me the news that love Ukraine.
Well, thank you so much for the support. And also, it's crazy to hear everyone's recounts of where they were and what they were doing when this war had just started. Of course, y'all saw at the beginning of the stream where what I was doing when the war had started. I was playing Train Sim World, and I was still a gaming channel. And I've come a very long way, and I have to say, I'm so much happier with what I'm doing now. Although this, of course, is a dreadful war, I'm much happier covering news and current events than I was as a gaming channel. I never really wanted to become a gaming channel, but I had absolutely nothing to do. I didn't have a job because of COVID, and so I was trying to sit down and do something to occupy my time and hopefully do good at, but it never really went anywhere, and I wasn't really happy doing games. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and I thank you so much for the massive amount of support with $1 for every 100, well, every day. Of course, it helps out our channel a great deal, and you supported this channel so much over our history, and it's incredible to see everyone come together and just support our channel tonight, because, you know, I'm always trying to go and get as much support for the fundraisers as possible, but everyone's showing support to me tonight, and I'm more than honored. There's really no words I can even say to thank you all so much for your support. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to Matthew. I'm about to get all emotional about it, but I thank you so much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
Okay, and just a quick heads up, we do have 44 super chats to get to now. So moving on to the next one, we have a $50 donation from John Boyer, who says, congrats Enforcer and Enforcer Matt on 100 days of stellar coverage. I've been here pretty much since you began. I've beaten 2 cancers in the last 5 years and believe Ukraine will win in the long run. You give us all hope. Slava Zelensky and Slava Ukraine.
Well, thank you so much for the support, John. Of course, it's kind of sad to hear that you've had to deal with cancer twice over the past 5 years, but it is great to hear that you did make it through. And I thank you so much for the massive amount of support, of course. And I don't even know how we're going to answer super chats at this point because we've got so many of them. I'll have to only allot a minute to each one so that way we can just get to all of them. But with that, I thank you so much for the support. I thank you for saying that I give everyone hope. And of course, it's always greatly appreciated. You supported our channel and been around for a long time. And so I thank you once again. It does help us out a lot. And we're always very appreciative of everyone. And so with that, we're going to be moving on to the next question. But thank you once again, John, for the support.
And next up, we have a $40 donation from James Nyland, who says, in honor of Richard Harrison.
Richard Harrison. I think he was actually one of the journalists that got killed, wasn't he? Let me pull that up. Richard Harrison. I don't. If you're talking about the Pawn Stars guy,
I think he is actually talking about somebody in the chat from earlier. I think.
Oh, well, with that, I thank you so much for the support. And unfortunately, I don't know which Richard Harrison you're talking about, but I do send my condolences as well. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. And we're going to be moving on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $22 donation from Junebug, who says, you're number one. And it was an emoji.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, Junebug. It's always greatly appreciated. And both you, Junebug, and Junebug72 have been around for a long while, supporting this channel and also being huge cheerleaders. I consider both of our Junebugs massive cheerleaders and supporters of this channel. And I thank you so much for being kind of like my hype squad. And so with that, I thank you both so much for the support, especially you, Junebug, since you are the one who just sent it in. And so with that, I thank you so much. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from Tony Anya, who says, some pizza money. One day we will be counting the days of peace. Bless.
That's very true, and I hope that day comes sooner than later. Of course, this war could drag on to be a year, 2 years, 3 years. It could last to be 10 years or 8 years like the Donbass conflict's been. I hope it doesn't. I hope the peace comes soon, and I hope that every single day we can sit there and this will just start to be written down in the pages of history and will be something that kids will hardly care about in the future as they're just flipping through the pages of history, and it'll be something that was a terrible event but long behind everyone, and we can all focus on the good times and the peace that we'll be in. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support and also the nice little message right there. That was of course a wonderful little one. And with that, we're moving on to the next question.
All right, and moving on to the next one real quick. Let me get back up there to it. We have a $20 donation from Leaf Spring Army, one of our channel regulars and super fan, going and creating a username called Leaf Spring Army. That's pretty cool. I always get a kick out of that. But they said, that intro was boss. Have a stiff old-fashioned on me.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. Of course, just in case you don't know, because I think saying having a drink, I'm not old enough to drink actually, but I will of course take the support and get a root beer if you would like that. But I do thank you so much for the support, and also it's great to always hear huge amounts of support from all my viewers, and that's something that is crazy to me. Just to touch on it again, is that through the process of running the stream, we've made a lot of friends, a lot of fans, and it's crazy to me because before this, I mean, like, you know, I was a very good talker, of course, a great conversationalist, but I never really had a large friend group. The largest friend group I have is my reenacting group, and that's like around 9 people, and we only meet up a few times a year, and it's really crazy, honestly, to get so many people supporting me and rooting for me and saying I should become president or I should become a news reporter or keep doing this thing and go to law school and all that. It's wonderful to hear that from everyone, and it means a lot to me. And it of course bolsters Matthew as well, because Matthew also has a huge hype base as well. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and it does mean a lot to us. And with that, we're moving on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $25 donation from John Gambler, who says, I appreciate all you have done. I have been here since day 3, and thanks so much.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and you are a trooper. Everyone came in on day 4. Of course, like, I get when I say everyone, 1.7 thousand new subscribers came in on day 4, and before that, this channel only had 117 subscribers on day 3. And so you are literally one of the old guard. There's a guy in our Discord server. He's actually the arbiter there, who's in charge of everything. His name is Crazy, and believe it or not, funny story, he was on my stream, and he was the one who told me the war had started when I was running that train simulator stream when I was a gaming channel, surprisingly enough. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that was kind of like a bombshell right there, and I hope that a lot of people go to crazy and they're like, wow, dude, like thank you so much for telling him, because that literally started off the rest of this. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support once again, and we're going to be moving on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Smokey Valdez, who says, what is the summer looking like for a big Ukraine offensive?
Ooh, well, I would love to answer that, of course, but the thing is that I don't ever give away what the Ukrainians are doing. That would, of course, violate operational security, and that could put a lot of lives at risk if I was to say something that was correct, because I get a little bit of information here and there, and I don't want to say anything that could be, harming the Ukrainians. So with that, unfortunately, I can't answer that question, but I do thank you very much for the support. And also, before we move on to the next question, Matthew, I'm going to take a second to answer a question from Amor Fatih, I believe is the name. And they said, personal question from a homeschooling mom, were you? And the answer is no, I was never homeschooled. I actually went through public school from 1st grade all the way to 12th grade. Of course, COVID cut out my senior year, so I didn't actually get to finish that out. I just graduated. But yeah, I was actually not homeschooled. I actually went to public school, and somehow I just ended up being me. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that answers the question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from Old Salty Squid, who says, congrats on the 100-day anniversary. I look forward to the stream every night. I really appreciate what you both do. Have you guys thought about making a Moscow Mike t-shirt, Slava Ukraine?
We've thought about that. Matthew's, of course, the merchandise guy, so he just kind of comes up with the designs, and then I rubber stamp one out of like the 4 that we'll have. But we have been thinking about that. That is something that has been on our minds a little bit. But I'm going to leave that there. But I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the question a little bit. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from William Allen, who says Americans and others used the same salute up until the 1930s. During the Pledge of Allegiance and gatherings, Americans started placing the hand over the heart. Yes, all due to Hitler. Check videos to see for yourself.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and yes, that is largely true. And also, the swastika, which became the symbol of Nazism in Germany, was actually a common symbol in Native American culture and also amongst Southeastern Asian cultures as well. And that's why if you ever travel to India, Nepal, Myanmar, which is, called Burma, whichever one you want to call it, you'll actually see that a lot of people down there have like actual Nazi swastikas, but to them it doesn't mean Nazism, it means something else, which is very interesting to note. And also there was a lot of stuff in the United States that had swastikas on it before the war. In fact, in one of the towns I used to live in here in Alabama, there was actually swastikas like inscribed into the stones on a church that was built in the 1920s before the Nazi party actually became a thing in Germany. Well, at least in the large picture, I guess you could say. So with that, I thank you so much for the support and also sharing that little tidbit of information with us, because it is true. And I think with that in mind, we might see the letter Z removed from the English alphabet. And so with that, we're on to the next question.
And just to let everybody know, I am seeing the Moscow Mike t-shirt comments come through. At this point, my merch list is like a mile long. I'm definitely taking in all the suggestions. So up next, we have a $20 donation from Junebug, the one without the 72 on the end of the name, who says, so much to process. I will spare you questions. Love to all with gratitude. Let's break this 100-day invasion of Ukraine very soon. Russia needs to leave Ukraine alone forever. The Ukrainian spirit is strong.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and also I do have to say, I hope that this war does end incredibly soon. And also, unfortunately, how many super chats do we have, Matthew?
So let's see here, 40. So we still have about 40.
Golly, I thank you so much for the support, Junebug, and I do have to agree that hopefully this war will end very soon. Hopefully it won't drag on to day 300. Hopefully it'll only drag on to about 200 at the furthest. But one never knows. Of course, while of course I have high hopes, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't look too forward into the future. But of course, I always hope that this war will end soon. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment in a way. And with that being said, I always appreciate everyone who throws in the super chat. But for tonight, for brevity, we're going to have to try and start moving through them a little bit quicker and only assign about a minute to each of them, so that way we can get to all of them, and then also some live chat questions. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from 69 Manny NJ, who says, here since around day 15, give or take, this channel made my life so much easier in terms of getting my Ukraine news. Have you guys ever had mayo on your hot dogs? Try it.
I don't think I will, but I do thank you very much for the support and also the high praise. A lot of people have been here for an incredibly long amount of time, which is wild to me because for some reason I always feel like there's new people coming through, but a lot of y'all have been around forever and just find this to be the most reliable source of news and maybe the most interestingly delivered. So I thank you so much for the support, and it always helps us out a great deal, and it helps us to keep on covering this news and keep on doing it because this is actually our jobs. I spend all day doing this. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from BC Skyman, who says, I wonder who has been setting the fires in Russia. Is it Ukrainians or Russians? Slava Ukraine.
I think it would actually be Russian saboteurs that are setting the fires within Russia, because the Ukrainians would have a pretty hard time making it across the Russian border by and large and then around Russia, of course, without being found out to do those sorts of things. So I think those are actually Russian or Belarusian saboteurs who are doing that. So I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question in brief. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Krister Peterson, who says, is Putin a narcissist? And Krister, absolutely.
Yes, I would have to say so. Putin is 100% a narcissist. It's pretty much ingrained in his genes. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I could give loads of examples, but then that will start dragging into the time that I'm trying to make sure we balance enough so we can answer everyone's questions. And with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that did answer the question in a way. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And next up here, we have a $100 donation from Susan G, who says, congratulations on 100 days of your channel to the Enforcer and Enforcer Matt. I've been watching you since day 21. Please don't mind if someone corrects your pronunciation of places or Ukraine or Russian. That's your charm. Slava Ukraine.
Well, thank you so much for the support, Susan. Of course, it's always greatly appreciated. And also, I've known you've been around since day 21. You have super chatted before, and I've also seen you in the chat before. And so, of course, it's always great to know we have longtime viewers around that have been around for a very long time, and a lot of them. And also, I try and make sure that my pronunciations aren't just butchering things, because I have seen some butchering going on YouTube of Ukrainian town names. And sometimes it's so bad, you're like, geez, where do these people learn how to say these names? Like Zaporizhia. Like I've heard Zaporizhia or Zaporizhia and stuff like that. I'm like, what? So I am trying to correct it, but of course, I will make mistakes, and I'm glad that a lot of people just find that to be charming instead of insulting like some people do. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, Susan. It is always greatly appreciated. And with that being said, we are on to the next question, but thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from W, who says, I'm sad it's been 100 days, but thanks for all your hard work and Semper Fi.
And I thank you so much for the support. Of course, I don't care how long this war goes. If it goes 800 days, I'll be covering it for 800 days. I'm here for the long run, and I'm going to be covering this war until it concludes. And so, of course, a lot of people do appreciate that, but I said that I would do that, and I will. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the question, and also Semper Fi. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Richard Bryan, who says, what do you think of my idea of paying off the Russian troops to quit the fight? Say $50,000 for an enlisted man and $100,000 for an officer.
I think it's an interesting idea, but one thing that I would think is that $50,000 for soldiers to desert is pretty steep. I think giving them 2 bags of buckwheat and 2 postcards might get them to desert. Of course, I'm just kidding, but I actually do think that that is something that the Ukrainians should try and implement. Of course, these soldiers may surrender. You can then give them the reward and then probably get a little bit of information out of them. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. It's very similar to Chu Hoi, and if you don't know what that is, type in CHU space HOI on the internet, and that will tell you about the Chu Hoi program, which is very similar in principle to what you're describing. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support once again. Hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And moving on, we have a $20 donation from BSG Wolf, who says, with recent Ukrainian gains, Russia logistics issues like pulling out T-62s, how long do you think the war will go on?
It can't go on much longer. I mean, I'm trying to think of an actual measurement, but the thing is that it's all kind of like a hocus pocus magic when we're talking about how long the Russians can go on, because there are so many variables one has to take into account when talking about that it's really hard to ascertain, even for me. And I know a lot of people hold a high regard for me, and that's why I'm saying even for me, because we would, of course, have to count in the population, the industrial capabilities, the economy, of course, their current stockpiles of arms and munitions, their logistical connections to their actual forces on the front, how their railroads are conducted, how the condition of their government is. There are just so many things that you really can't account for with those variables that I can't actually say with certainty when this war would end. But I would feel that it will most likely end before this year, because the economy of the Russians is doing so bad, and also they're missing so much of the vital equipment and parts that they need to produce new military arms, that they're going to be depleting their inventories incredibly soon, at least within this year at this rate. So with that, I hope that answers the question, and I do thank you very much for the support. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from Turn Off Your Gaslight, who says, again, no question, I just want to support you. I could sing your praises, but others have done so better than I can. What you both do is very appreciated.
Well, thank you so much for the support. Turn off your gaslight. I always remember whenever you show up to turn off my gaslight, and I always appreciate so much, you know, that you would toot the whistle, but you're not because everyone's doing that. So I thank you so much for the support. Once again, it does mean a lot to us as usual, and you've heard that a million times, but it does. And so I thank you so much for the support. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a super chat from Scott Mensing, who puts in a $20 donation and says, congratulations on 100 days of excellence in journalism. You guys deserve the Edward R. Murrow Award. Question, do you know what the day the infamous Leaf Spring event happened, the birth of the world-famous Leaf Spring Army?
Unfortunately, I can't tell you when that started. It started within the first 2 weeks, I believe, or the first 3 weeks, but it's been around ever since. Sadly, I cannot remember when. I think it was around day 15, though. But with that, I thank you so much for the support. Also, I thank you so much for the praise of the channel. I try my best, and I'm glad that a lot of people do appreciate it. And it means a lot to me to hear words like that all the time from a lot of people. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address the question at least a little bit. But sadly, this whole entire thing is kind of meshed together for me so much that it's hard for me to remember specific moments in time anymore. But with that, I hope that answers the question, and we're on to the next one. But thank you once again.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from MMC, who says, your commitment is appreciated as always.
And I thank you so much for appreciating my commitment. My family, like Matthew, could tell you that when I get committed to something, I just stick with it. Like I actually learned bagpipes on my own, which a lot of people said was incredibly difficult. But honestly, that whole entire thing about stuff being difficult in life is not true. Everything's easy if you just commit yourself to it. Like really, like rather than physical limitations, like if you have like scoliosis, so you can't become a pilot. Beyond that, you can literally do anything you set out to do. You just have to stick with it. And if the going gets rough, you just got to get tougher. You know, that's kind of my philosophy. But I do thank you very much for appreciating my commitment. It's kind of like a historical thing with me. So of course, every once in a while, my mom's like, do you have Asperger's? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. But if I do, it's doing me okay. So with that, I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does address the question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from Tina Bagiri, who says, Enforcer, I have been a quiet watcher for a while now. Thank you and Matt for all of your hard work.
Well, thank you so much for the support. We always have a lot of quiet followers, a lot of people who don't chat in the live chat or send in super chats. But it's always cool to hear some of our quiet and unseen viewers pop up every once in a while, and of course give us a lot of praise. It's always good to know that our quiet viewers also enjoy this stream as well, and I'm always very honored by everyone and how y'all can spend y'all's time any way y'all want in the world, but y'all would rather spend it here watching the news than elsewhere. It's always a huge honor to me to think that people think that about this channel, and y'all don't really know how much that means to me. But with that, I thank you so much for the support, and with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from Michael Sachinsky, who says, as I listen to Zelensky's speech, I feel like I'm watching Reagan from the past.
Yeah, I mean, like, I could see that. Yeah, honestly, I feel like I never really want to compare other politicians to each other. The one few times I will is when I compare Zelensky to Winston Churchill. I honestly feel like Zelensky's in a category of his own. He's kind of laying out a different, I guess you could say, set of attributes, at least in the modern world. Of course, there's historical precedent for guys like him, but in the modern world, he's setting out a new precedent for what a politician, a leader of a nation can be. And I think that he's kind of in a different category than Reagan and even Churchill, because when I make the comparison in between him and Churchill, it's similar, but it's still vague in a way. But still, I can see the similarities in how he gives speeches. Of course, a lot of people know Reagan not getting political, but for making great speeches, he was a very, very good personality, and he made very, very good speeches. A lot of people remember him for that alone. You know, of course, he was called the Great Communicator, so that kind of gives a good example as to how good he was. But with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address the question in a way. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Ashley, who says, your humor is a welcome touch to such horror. Thank you, gentlemen, for all the hard work you put into the news over the past 100 days.
Well, I thank you very much once again, and of course, it's great to hear so many people always pouring in so much support. I always try and do the best I can, and so it's wonderful to hear people actually appreciate what I do. Of course, I've never gone a minute on the stream without someone saying they appreciate it, so I've always known it, but it's always incredible to hear it all the time because you know, sometimes bots come out of the woodworks and they're always trying to lash out and say, oh, this sucks, you know, or something like that. And so it's always just good to hear a lot of people say that what I'm doing is a service, so that way I know I'm doing something good, and a lot of people do enjoy it. And so I thank you so much for the support. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Henrietta Langley, who does not leave a comment. Thank you very much, Henrietta, for your very generous donation there, and we appreciate you being a viewer of the channel and also helping us run it. And next up, we have a $10 donation from Super Action General, who says, "To victory, I love the streams."
Well, I thank you very much for enjoying the streams, and I do agree, to victory. I hope that the Ukrainians can push the Russians back to the border in every aspect, and hopefully they can liberate the Donetsk and Luhansk republics from their tyrannical governments that are overshadowed by the Russians who treat them like puppets. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I do agree with that comment. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
Okay, and next up we have a $10 donation from Inna, who says, "Y'all are awesome. I love these streams. It's great to see how much support Ukraine is getting, but it's even more amazing how much support this channel has provided. Thank you for all your hard work."
And I thank you so much for appreciating what we do. Sometimes that falls to the wayside because, of course, it only happens every Sunday, but we've managed to raise a massive amount of support for Ukraine that I never thought would be something feasible. You know, like I never thought that one day I'd be talking about $300,000 raised for Ukraine over 3 months. That means on average we've raised nearly $100,000 a month for Ukraine. And when you think about that, that's incredible. I don't think there's anyone out there who can like raise those kinds of funds on YouTube in support of Ukraine rather than this channel. And the only reason this channel can do it is because of the soldiers of the Lee Spring Army. And so I thank you all once again. Y'all don't know how much I appreciate the community we have here. It's a wonderful community. And with that being said, thank you so much for the support. It does mean a lot. And we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a super chat from JK for a $10 donation, who says, "I'm a nipple type of guy. Let me have it."
Well, I thank you very much for the support. When Matthew said it, it sounded very, very wrong, but I like the enthusiasm that Matthew put into it. So with that, I thank you.
Let me have it.
Let me have it. But I thank you so much for the support. That was a pretty funny one to hear out loud. And yeah, I'm more of a nipple person myself when it comes to Gatorade. Drinking Gatorade out of the nipple on top of the Gatorade makes it taste better, in my opinion. Of course, it doesn't. But for some reason in my head, it just does. So I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the question. Well, the answer, the comment. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Brian Bolling. I sound like I'm a Boston person. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Brian Bolling. He says, "Kiev was the original capital of the Russian people. Maybe Ukraine needs to push its rightful claim over Russia."
Maybe so. If y'all don't remember, the Kievan Rus was actually the first group of Russians in the area, which is a very interesting history. But over time, the Russians and the Ukrainians began to split into two culturally similar yet very separate cultural groups. So with that, thank you so much for the support. And also the nice little comment there. That's actually a very good look back at early history in Eastern Europe. Not really early. I'm talking about like 900 AD, 800 AD-ish. But still a very interesting thing to consider. And so with that being said, I thank you so much for the support. And we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Tim Swenson, who says, "Besides law, you should minor in some sort of TCOM. I think mass media could get you your presidency, and great show, guys."
Well, I thank you very much for the support. But why major in TCOM? I think that's telecommunications. If I'm already good at it, in your opinion, all I need is the history degree, and the rest will flow. Of course, that sounds really cocky, but still, you know, like the point still stands for me. I would be much more happier going with the history degree alone, and then going to law school. Because if I'm good at public speaking, I don't really think that one has to get a degree in something to be good at it. Honestly, you know, a degree is just a degree to me. But anyways, I thank you so much for the support. Hope that does weigh in on the comment a little bit. But of course, I thank you for the high praise. It's always wonderful to hear. And that being said, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Level 70, who says, Enforcer, if Ronald Reagan was president today, how do you think he would have handled this war?
If Ronald Reagan was president today, that's a really tough one, honestly, to answer, because Ronald Reagan had a very interesting way of going around things. During Ronald Reagan's presidency, not getting political or anything, we're not touching on his domestic policies, we're just touching on his foreign policies and what he actually did. He would run the largest war games that you ever saw in the Cold War. Like in 1985, Able Archer. Also in 1984, I think they had another massive war game that also included the British. And so you could get the idea there that he was running massive war games, but at the same time, he would try and be as diplomatic as possible with the Russians, and could be credited with a lot of, I guess you could say, the thawing of Soviet and American, Eastern and Western relations. Although there was a large amount of domestic issues within the Soviet Union itself that occurred coincidentally at the same time that did lead to its downfall. But still, if he was around today, I don't really know how he would have dealt with this situation, because there's nothing comparable historically that he dealt with to say that there's a precedent for how he would have dealt with this. So unfortunately, I don't really think I can answer that question, but it's still a very interesting brain teaser in a way. And so if a lot of people would like to discuss that in the live chat without getting political and getting into his policies and stuff and just discussing what y'all think he would have done, that would be pretty cool. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question at least a little bit. Sadly, I don't think there is a precedent to say how Reagan would have dealt with this. And so with that, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Phil Tatham, who says, sorry guys, that's all I can afford, but bless you both. Slava Ukraine and Hiram Slava.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. And also, I'm going to say this like Zelensky, Slava Ukraini, Hiram Slava. And with that, thank you so much for the support, and we're on to the next question.
And next up, let me recognize a $10 donation from Robert McIver. He does not leave a comment, and thank you very much, Robert, for your support of the channel. And up next, we have a $10 donation from Jason Smith, who says, thumbs up.
Well, thumbs up to you as well, Jason, and I thank you so much for the support. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Junebug, who says, or actually sends the emoji of a Doge waving fans in celebration.
Hey, well, thank you so much for the support, Junebug. And also, just because you put the Doge in, we have corgis. I'm going to pull up a picture of one. Of course, this isn't my corgi, but corgis are beautiful. Look at these corgis. Aren't they precious? Look at this one. It's so happy. It looks just like ours, honestly. And then there's all kinds, you know, there's the sploof where they have the butt and the legs just laying out in the back. They're the cutest dogs. I love them. Look at this one. It looks like a bunny. But anyways, just that, and I thank you so much for the support. You got me thinking about my corgis, which are actually sleeping right now, right behind me. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question, and with, well, at least address the emoji. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Alex Sky. Excuse me. Goodness. But anyways, Alex says,
sounds like a lot of that's starting up.
Yeah, that was a bad one. But anyways, Alex says, as a Ukraine-born and USA becoming my second home and country of my 3 kids, I would like to say big thank you to all who pray and support Ukraine. God bless all of you, and Slava Ukraine. God bless USA.
Well, I thank you so much for giving us all the blessings here in America. Of course, we always try and do the right thing, although sometimes, if you look back through history, sometimes it's a little questionable where we did the right things in modern history in certain events. But still, of course, it's greatly appreciated that you do send support to the United States. A lot of us try our best. There's many great people here in the United States, like every country. And of course, there's the occasional bad egg who's around here and there. We're not going to cover who those bad eggs are. But still, I do thank you so much for the support. And I'm glad that you do enjoy the United States of America. The United States is honestly an incredible country. Of course, I'm biased. I've lived here my entire life. And I have to say that because I'm an Alabama born and raised kid, I've been all over the United States, traveled all the way out to Wyoming and Idaho, and through Montana, and all the way up to Washington, D.C., which isn't all the way up north to the northeast. But I have to say that everywhere in the United States that I've ever been, I have to say Alabama is my favorite place. Alabama is full of wonderful people, full of Southern charm, and it's a great state. I just love Alabama. And so while you do say God bless America, I also say God bless Alabama because I'm from here and I'm a huge fan of my state, huge fan of it. So with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does weigh in and address the comment, and I also thank you for the great blessings. It's always good for people to, of course, send blessings our way because we're always trying to send some to others, and it's always great to get some in return. And so thank you very much once again. I'm happy that you're happy with the support that America is providing. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And just real quick to answer something I saw in the live chat from Honest M, he says, Corgi reveal question mark, and maybe so. Maybe one day we will reveal the Corgis. Of course, the enforcer will have to blur their face. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat for the sake of time.
That was slick.
That was
slick. I like that one.
But moving on to our next super chat, we have a $50 donation from Walter A. Lakota Jr. He does not leave a comment, but thank you very much, Walter, for that very generous donation.
And of course, I thank you as well. It does mean a lot to us, and it always helps us out a great deal. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. And I say this stuff like it's a broken record, but this is me. So with that, we're on to the next question.
All right, and next up, we have a $10 donation from Blackhawk NZ, who also does not leave a comment, but thank you very much for your support of the channel. And moving on, we have a $10 donation from Nick Anderson, who says, this war started in 2014, and they're back where they started. If you're here for the long run, you might be doing this a while. I think it's never going to end, and stop saying with that being said, please.
Well, I thank you very much for the support. Unfortunately, I cannot stop saying with that being said. I literally said that before these streams were a thing, if you watched the very beginning of the stream. And I will be here for a while, and I'm totally fine with that. I will sit here until the end of this war, and I will cover every single day. And I hope it ends soon, actually, because while I will be here forever, if it goes on forever, I do hope for it to end. There's nothing but suffering that comes out of a war and nothing but turmoil, and so it's always good to go back into peace. And so with that being said, no one's going to stop me from saying that, all right? But with that being said, I thank you so much for the support. Unfortunately, I can't stop doing that. It's my nature, if you remember that story from your childhood. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have I haven't had time to translate this, please forgive me, a $50 NZ donation from Robert Johnson, who says, did you hear about the rumored Chinese exercises on the Russian border and the suspicion that China might stab them in the back and bite off some contested land? Sorry if you've covered this, I've missed it.
Well, thank you very much for the support. And to answer that question the best I can, I think that the Chinese were not going to do anything militarily against the Russians. The Russians are in a weak spot, and the Chinese might backstab them, but the Chinese work through economics. They never really work through anything militarily. So I believe, if anything, they're going to exploit Russia's weakened economic state to buy massive amounts of, I guess you could say, raw materials and at very cheap prices. I don't ever think they'll actually be trying to take chunks of contested land, because that will incur a war with the Russians, and the Russians and the Chinese are, of course, both nuclear powers, which kind of, by default, kind of protects their sovereignty in a way. And so with that, I thank you very much for the support. That's kind of my opinion on it. And of course, I could be wrong. The Chinese could be preparing for that. I was wrong with Ukraine. I said the Russians would never invade because that would be military and economic suicide, and then they did. So with that, hope that answers the question, and we're on to the next one. But I thank you so much for the support.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from Carolyn. And this might be political, but I'll let you decide, Enforcer, after I read it. They say, very nervous about midterm elections and how a change in majority power may get Ukraine aid embroiled in isolationist craziness. What is your thoughts?
Unfortunately, I don't really get into the particulars on politics, so I won't be able to answer that question all too much. But I will say that I don't really see examples in either party of people, of large amounts of the majority of people in a certain party, talking about both of them, who largely oppose supporting Ukraine. There are, of course, the outliers. I've seen the outliers. And, of course, on both ends of the spectrum, if you're just talking about far right and far left people in general, if you reach far enough out on both ends, you have Antifa on the left, just to name them directly, and we've seen Antifa, for example, in Germany, actually calling the Ukrainians Nazis and saying that the West shouldn't support the war. So we have an example there of far left people against the war. And then if you go far enough to the right side of the spectrum, to, I guess you could say, the neo-Nazis, then they're in support of this war as well. So you know, you go far enough in either direction, you're going to find those kinds of people. But I don't weigh in on American politics, particularly about politicians and stuff, and so unfortunately I can't answer it in that regard. But I do thank you very much for the support, and with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $9 donation from Raven7, who says, "Keep up the good work in Slava Ukraine. I think the Queen will outlive Putler."
I hope she will. I'm a huge fan of the, well, I'm not a huge fan of the royal family. I respect them and admire their historical position as the monarchs of the British lands. You know, well, I guess you could call them the British lands, because it's not just the islands. It's, of course, the overseas territories that they still control, although they're few now. But still, I do respect the royal family for who they are, what they do, and for the large part, while they are embroiled in scandal every once in a while, there is no institution on earth that is pure in form. Not even the Vatican is pure in form. There's always a scandal here and there, and they're supposed to be, you know, holier than holy. So I don't ever really put it down on people that there are scandals here and there. I still think it's a respectable organization. And of course, it has historical precedence, and I believe that it's something important for the British to have. It's a part of their culture. And so with that, I hope she does outlive Putin. I hope Putin sees a quick demise soon. And with that being said, I thank you so much for the support, and we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have an $8 donation from Putin will hang in the middle of the Kremlin,
Great
who says,
name.
Russian soldiers... Yeah, great one. Very long name, but a very good one, too. They say, Russian soldiers are much misunderstood. They are like Japanese soccer supporters who clean up the stadium after the match.
I would have to agree, in a way. Could you reread that one for me real quick, man? So that way I can make sure to collect my thoughts on it.
They said, Russian soldiers are much misunderstood. They are like Japanese soccer supporters who clean up the stadium after the match.
I don't really know in particular what you mean by that, actually, because I would agree with it, but for some reason I feel like I'm misunderstanding the context there. But in the sake of understanding, although I don't really get it exactly, I will agree with you. Apparently Russian soldiers are like that. If that is a joke, I'm sorry that it's going over my head, but that one I'm missing. But I do thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And also, that's a great testament to Japan's, I guess you could say, community-like collectivist, if you would like to call it, culture, where they look out for the community as a whole. And of course, it makes Japan a very interesting place culturally. And with that, I thank you so much for the support, and we're moving on to the next question.
And next up, we have an $8 donation from Ministina, who says, please keep an eye out for where the captured Azov soldiers are, because I've been looking everywhere. Putin had planned to execute them, so I'm really scared for them.
We know that some of those captured soldiers are in the city of Olenivka. There's a prisoner of war camp there, and some of them are being held at that camp. So we do know about where a few of them are, and of course the Red Cross is going to be keeping an eye on them and doing routine inspections to ensure that they are alive and in somewhat good condition. So you can rest assured that if they are executed, it will be known. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. And if they go missing, it'll also be known as well. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does alleviate your fears a little bit about what may happen to the Azov. They can't really kill them without people knowing or knowing that they disappeared. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And moving on, we have an $8 donation from Voitech CYVR, who says, I really like your style of presenting the news, and I see I am among many. Many hope that Putin will soon break all of his teeth on the tough Ukraine soon.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I can also agree as well that I hope that Putin does bite the dust with the Ukraine war. It's gone so terribly, and of course, in the modern day, with the Russian economy being so weak, unlike it was during Soviet times, where it was a little bit better off, I think that he may actually be kicking the bucket after this thing. Whether he gets killed or not is another question. But I do see that a large amount of civil unrest will most likely unfold after this war, and it may lead to the collapse of the current government and a formation of a new one. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. And also, I saw something in the live chat. I'd like to address it really quickly. How many super chats do we have left, Matthew?
We have about 30 left.
Ooh, I'm going to address this one real quick. Scott said fascism is far left. That's not actually true. What you're thinking about is Nazism, which was a mix of socialist ideology along with nationalist ideology. And so, at least in economic principle, it does fall on the left, but in terms of its nationalist tendencies, those are usually associated with the far right, because nationalism, of course, revolves around heavy belief in traditions and also the superiority of the nation over others. You know, that's kind of like falling into the social Darwinist stuff, which goes into late Romanticist theories and also, you know, what everyone was coming up with near the end of the 1800s. So, no, actually, fascism, by and large, unless if it's like Nazism, is actually a far-right ideology. So I hope that kind of clears that up a little bit. I think, you know, because you're kind of wanting to throw a little bit of shade at me, you might want to pick up some books and read about that a little bit more yourself. So with that, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $15 donation from Robert Johnson, who says, I find it funny that NATO are reinforcing their eastern front. Given Russian performance, I'd have cut spending. Not to take anything away from Ukrainian courage and ability, absolute respect to them.
Well, I thank you very much for the support. Can you reread that one for me real quick?
Robert said, I find it funny that NATO are reinforcing their eastern front. Given Russian performance, I would have cut spending. Not to take anything away from Ukrainian courage and ability, absolute respect to them.
I misunderstood that there for a second. And also, and we'll just move on beyond that part. But I do understand what you're saying there. For some reason, I misunderstood what you were saying for a second because I actually thought you were saying that you would cut spending to Ukraine. I was like, whoa, I was like, we don't want to do that. But I see what you're saying now. Pretty good joke, actually. I would have cut spending as well based off of the Russian performance. Honestly, you could beat them with a broomstick at this point. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. And so I hope that does address the comment in a way, and I do thank you very much once again for the support. Also, Scott, sorry, I didn't know you were talking about someone else. I thought you were talking about me, so I didn't mean to throw back shade at you for no reason. So hopefully no hard feelings there. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And in case anybody's keeping count, the Cambot has now visited us for the 7th time tonight. And moving on, we have a $5 donation from William Harris, who does not leave a comment, and thank you very much, William, for supporting the channel. And next up, we have a $5 donation from Judo 2001, who says, got my Mr. Lunchtime shirt today. It is wonderful. Here's $5 just so I can tell you how happy I am about it. Slava Ukraine, and good work, boys.
Well, thank you so much for the support. Of course, it's always great to hear that a lot of people do enjoy our merch. We always try and put a decent amount of effort into our designs so that way they don't come off as cheap. Because there's a lot of YouTube channels out there that have cheap looking merch that look kind of poorly designed. So we actually put a lot of effort into trying to make sure our designs are quality, and I'm glad that you do enjoy it. Hopefully you show it off to your friends and they learn about the Leaf Spring Army and Mr. Lunchtime. And with that being said, thank you so much for the support, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from the Fatso Ferret, who says, Slava Ukraine and hello from your Discord mod staff.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. I don't know which one you are, but we actually did have a chat a few hours ago, actually, the whole entire Discord mod staff team, and it, of course, was great to talk to y'all. I don't get to talk to y'all a lot, of course, because I'm busy either running errands or doing this, but, of course, it's always fun to talk to y'all, and, of course, throw a couple of jokes around and stuff like that. So I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the question. I thank you as well very much for the support. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And next up, let me recognize a $5 donation from Daniel Tickles. Thank you very much for your donation to the channel, Daniel. We appreciate it very much, as always. And moving on, we have a $5 donation from Carl Clark, who says, have some coffee, guys.
Well, I thank you very much for the coffee fund. Of course, I'm sounding like a broken machine at this point, but that's because I'm trying to think about how in the world are we fitting in 30 super chats here. But anyways, I thank you very much for the coffee fund, and we will make sure to get some, because we're probably going to need some to get through the rest of the super chats for the night. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from El Fuego, who says, what do you think the status of the war will be on day 200 and day 300?
Oh man, unfortunately, I gotta say, I don't have a crystal ball, and predicting too far into the future like that, I will almost always end up being very wrong, because there's just too many variables for me to account for to actually come up with an accurate estimate of what they'll be doing. But with that, I thank you so much for the support. I'm sorry I can't answer that question, but I don't want to say anything like that because then people will hold me to it, and it would be a very, very bad guesstimation on my end. So with that, I'm sorry about that, but I do thank you very much for the support. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Havlin Tuff, who says, regular Sunday donor, but first time super chat. Here is a five spot. Here's a 5 spot towards your college fund.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and it always helps us out to be able to look forward into the future, of course, looking at law school and such things like that, and also to be able to keep on running this channel. Of course, we always have to keep the lights on and pay the bills these days. Of course, taking cars into servicing and such things like that aren't cheap, and so it always helps us out to keep on doing this because, you know, of course, if we couldn't survive off the channel, we'd have to go get jobs, and then these things would end because I wouldn't have enough time to do them. But I do thank you so much for the support, and also chipping in a little bit towards that college fund. It helps us out a lot, and I thank you once again. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
So we are currently on super chat number 80, and we have to get to 97. So we have about 17 to go. My mind has totally left me there for a minute. But anyways,
since
next
it did
up,
leave you, before we move on, we're going to have to put a cutoff on the super chats tonight. It's honestly been insane, and so we're going to have to put a cutoff on them because it's going to be tough for us to answer the next 17. So if you would like to support the channel, please get some merch or save your super chat for tomorrow. If you do save it for tomorrow, we'll be able to get to it first thing, most likely in the first 2 question segments we do, or we'll get to it after the stream. But we do want to make sure we can recognize everyone who does send in some support and also answer their questions. So we will be having to put a cutoff on for the rest of the night. But I thank you all so much once again for the support. It's been massive tonight, and it always helps us out and helps us to keep on doing this thing. And so with that, thank you all once again. It's incredible how much people enjoy this stream and want us to keep on doing it. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
and just real quick, I want to recognize something from the live chat. Thorfinn said, LSAT is useless for law school. Good luck, sir. Thorfinn, I couldn't agree more. The LSAT was an absolute monster. I'm so glad that's over. But next up, moving on for the sake of time, we have an $8 donation from Robert Johnson again, who says, last donation from me today. With that being said, let's move on to the next one.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and in honor of the super chat, we're going to move on to the next one.
And moving on to the next one, we have a $5 donation from Bruce Allison, who says, the war have 10-day lift, then Russian will pull out.
I don't think the war will only go on for 10 more days. I actually was looking way back at the start of this war, and actually on day 6, I had reported, because someone had put out in the news, and it was one of the few times I used external news for something, they had pointed out that if the siege of Kiev lasted 10 days, the Russians would end the war. And that turned out to not be true at all, because we're now on day 100. So I don't want to say it would end too soon. I think the Ukrainians would have to thoroughly thwack them, but I think that that is already in progress, and it's very well around the corner within the next few months. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Cesar E. Lopez L. II, who says, for that spam fund, even if it's only a 6 out of 10, it's still good. Hold the bacon.
Well, thank you very much for the support, and I'm glad that you are going to support my spam fund. I think we have a fund for just about everything at this point. We have coffee, we have pizza, we have drink funds, Jameson break funds, we have everything. Now we have spam funds and college funds. Next thing you know, there's going to be a 401k fund. But with that, I thank you so much for the support. It's always greatly appreciated, and I will make sure to have a spam sandwich. They are delicious. And with that being said, thank you once again, and we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from GNF, who says, will the Russians get to the point like Germany in the world wars where their major pushes, let's see here. Let me try to see what he meant to say. Let me start over and try to retranslate that one real quick. Will the Russians get to the point like Germany in the world wars where their major push drain their supplies so much that they cannot push anymore?
I think that may be the case. We could actually see that in the Ardennes offensive that the Germans pulled near the end of the war, and also a couple of the other ones. And we saw that while they were limited in scope, they didn't really make it far. And I think the Russians have already made it to that point. We could see near Severodonetsk, they of course broke through the Ukrainian lines a little bit in 2 separate areas. But beyond that, it looks like that's largely stalled, and the Ukrainians are now starting to push them back. So I think that they've already met their Ardennes, I guess you could call it offensive, during this war, and they may have exhausted their last bit of energy as far as offensives. Because as the war is going on, their offensives got smaller and smaller. We saw an offensive across the entirety of the country from Kiev to Mykolaiv. We then saw them remove the top part of it and then start focusing entirely on the Izium to Kherson area again. Then they removed the entire southern front from the equation, and they only kept Mariupol in the picture and the area around Severodonetsk. And now we've seen that Mariupol, of course, that chapter closed, and now they're only focusing on the Severodonetsk area, but they haven't started doing anything else again. And so I think, for the large part, they've already run out of steam based off of the amount of offensives and how much smaller they keep on getting in scope. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from That Frost Wolf, who says, "Yo, Enforcer, hints on what Ukrainians need to push back Shrek's uglies, or should farmers catapult shovels of Skippy peanut butter over to hit them?"
Well, I thank you very much for the support. I think the best advice for the Ukrainians to be taking out the Russians is to just put a washing machine out in the open and put an ambush around it. I think that would get plenty of them. So with that, I thank you very much for the support and also the pretty good joke. You got a good laugh out of Matthew. I also got a good laugh out of it too. And so with that, thank you once again, and we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Raphael Harris, who says, "Enforcer, congrats on 100 days and cheers to the Leaf Spring Army. News channels offer little war info, and your stream was rocking YouTube day 4 and on. Bless y'all."
Well, thank you very much for the support. And I still remember the time that we had 16.5 thousand live viewers. It was amazing. The stream got like 250,000 views over one night. And it was insane to me. Of course, a lot of people have waned their interest of the war. As things go on and time passes, people just lose interest in things. But there is still a massive amount of people out there who are interested in this war and what's going on. And of course, all of those people are here in the Leaf Spring Army. And so I thank you all once again so much for the support and hanging out here and enjoying this news. And it's always an honor to me to report it. And hopefully this channel can go on after the war to keep on doing better and brighter things and covering news topics all around the world. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support and also the high praise once again. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Applied Cryogenics, who says, "Thanks for the update, guys, and Slava Ukraine."
Well, I thank you so much for enjoying the update, and Rom Slava. Or wait a minute, no, let me say it like Zelensky does. Slava Ukraini. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And moving on, we have a $5 donation from Thomas Sato, who says, "My question is, why did the DPR troops cross the road?" And the answer is, to get back to the DPR.
Well, I thank you very much for the support. And I also have a joke for you as well. Why did the LPR cross the road? Because the Ukrainians were on their side. Well, with that was a pretty crappy one, honestly. But with that, I thank you very much for the support. I hope you enjoyed the crappy joke. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And officially, the Cambot has visited us for the 8th time tonight. And moving on, we have a $5 donation from Diffuse56, who says, "I've been AFK a bit, but I saw a report today about how Ukraine lost several helicopters while trying to drop supplies into Mariupol. Is this true or false?"
They actually lost those helicopters way early on in the war. All the videos that have been coming out about helicopter resupplies to Mariupol are from like months ago at this point. But I do thank you very much for the support. Those helicopters would have been lost way earlier on in the war, and it is true that they did lose a few helicopters doing that. But with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you very much for the support. And with that being said, we are on to the next question. And how many super chats do we have left?
So we currently have just 10 left.
All right, and we're going to answer those 10, and then we're going to move on to maybe 2 live chat questions, and then we're going to be rounding out the stream for the night. And so with that, on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Suzanne B, who says, "I've been watching for 97 days. I admire the facts, not drama. Thank you, gentlemen. You are greatly appreciated for your time and knowledge. You are the best. And thank you very much, Suzanne, for the very kind words.
And I thank you very much as well. Of course, I really enjoy. It's wonderful for me to hear that people do enjoy this stuff. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fun to do this. Well, it's not fun, but it wouldn't be tolerable to do this, I guess you could say, if everyone just hated it. But it's always wonderful to hear that a lot of people do enjoy the way I report the news, and I try and report it in a way that's palatable for everyone. I don't try and be too vile. There are some people out there that like go out of their way to be incredibly vile with what they say and just like go for the ultimate shock factor, and I honestly feel like it's very distasteful, especially when talking about a war. But with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the question, well, the comment in a way, and of course, it's always greatly appreciated. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And now we are on Super Chat number 90, and this one goes to Natoya85, who puts in a $5 donation, but does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Natoya, for your support of the channel. It's appreciated, as always. And moving on, we have a $4 donation from Jeanette McLean, who says, "Thanks for the great job you do. Have some cheese bread with the pizza. Thanks from Vancouver Island in Canada."
Well, I thank you very much for the support. I've never had that before, but I will make sure to give it a shot. It actually sounds kind of good. But I do thank you very much for the support, and I will try out that food that you're putting a fund in for. And so with that, thank you once again. It's always greatly appreciated, and it's always really cool to hear that we have a lot of Lee Spring Army people from around the world. We had someone say they're from South Korea, and that's really cool to me that there's people in Asia even who get up and watch this stream, although it has to be a weird time of day for them, maybe like early morning or in the middle of the night for all I know. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support, and it does help us out a great deal. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $4 donation from Yenrock, who says, "Russian politicians in Primory region demands end to war in Ukraine at local parliament meeting. The start of the dissolving support for Putin in Russia."
I think I actually covered that on the news here. I think it was actually last week's news. But yes, I did see that, and there is diminishing support for Putin. But the problem is that these people are either arrested or like, you know, forced out of their positions incredibly fast, or they lose their, I guess you could say, political power, and then they're just replaced by a Putin yes man. But still, it's good to see that support is waning for Putin, and it has been over the course of this whole war. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address the question. And with that, we're on to the next one. But before we do, Matthew, how many Super Chats did we answer again?
We are now on number 93.
Golly! All right, and with that, we're on to the next question.
And this one goes to the mysterious Richard Harrison, who we were referenced to earlier, who puts in a $2 donation and says, "First super chat as I've not had any money," from England.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and it's totally fine if anyone is hard pressed for, you know, like monetarily or anything. It's totally fine if y'all don't send in super chat. I would highly recommend y'all don't really, you know, so that way y'all can make sure y'all's financial situation is okay. And if y'all ever wanted to, make sure it goes to a Sunday fundraiser, because while it's always, of course, wonderful to get support for this channel and help us keep running and help us to stay afloat, it's always important to try and help out the Ukrainians because they are in a very tough bind. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and it's always wonderful to hear that you do enjoy this channel enough that you would, of course, you know, support the channel, although it's kind of tough for you. And of course, it's great to hear that we do have viewers from Britain. I'm always, of course, I'm like 90% British, so it's always good to hear that there's British people watching. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, and with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And we now just have 5 more super chats to go. And up next, we have a $2 donation from Merwin and a $2 donation from Secular Sakai, who do not leave comments, but thank you very much for your support of the channel. And moving on, we have a $2 donation from Honest M, who says, "You haven't made it until the porn bots join your stream."
That's true. That's very true. We've made it now. They're in the comments section. They're in the freaking live chat. They're everywhere, man, and they're annoying. They're so freaking annoying. Also, by the way, one more thing is that if you ever see, this is something I didn't cover before, but I think it's very important to cover. I'm not going to be doing a PayPal because I started to think about that, and I actually remember the reason why I wasn't doing that is because it's going to be very easy for scammers to pull a fast one on people. Because if I have an active PayPal, someone could make a very similar lookalike YouTube account that says the Enforcer on it, and they could approach viewers and be like, hey, you want to support me? Support me through my PayPal. And then they send support to the scammer through PayPal thinking it's me, and they get scammed. And so while YouTube does take 30% of the super chats, I find it to be much more safer, and I think that people could, of course, have a lot of peace of mind knowing that any support that's given to the channel will be going to the channel, and it may not be going to it won't be going to some kind of scammer out there who's impersonating me or something like that. Same with fundraisers. All my fundraisers are run through YouTube Give, which is on stream only. So if there's ever an account out there that's asking you for support through WhatsApp, PayPal, or asking you to support a fundraiser and it's not on my stream, that is a no-go. Do not listen to that and do not fall for it. So with that, I just wanted to get that PSA out there real quick. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And we now have a $2 donation from William Harris, who says, congrats, 100. How old is everyone in the chat?
Well, let's see how many people will dox themselves. Of course, doxing yourself would involve a little bit more than giving out your age, but I wonder, I mean, like demographically, because YouTube does give me the demographics of all my viewers, most of my viewers are over the age of 30 or so. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that as the normal figure is 30 and up. But with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that you do get some answers to that real quick. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And for our final super chat of the night until we move on to our live chat questions, we have another $2 donation from William Harris, who says, blur your face.
I don't know. I mean, like, I was thinking about wearing the mask, but that's kind of tough to do in the modern world. Cop would shoot me. But with that, I thank you very much for the support. I may, and look, you can see it coming in the live chat right now. A lot of my viewers are above the age of 30. There's a few, of course, that are younger than that, but the demographics do not lie. But I'm totally fine with that. It's actually very neat to know that I can bring in a mature, older audience that is, of course, interested in this news and may have a bit of an idea of what's going on over there compared to, you know, younger people. Because honestly, while some younger people do know what they're talking about, largely they just, like, pick up one talking point and they just go with it, and then they don't really know what the rest of it entails. But with that, I thank you very much for the support. If I was, I'm so tired. Like, honestly, I think Matthew's mind is shot. That's why he's messing up over there. And my mind is shot kind of too. So I don't even know if I was addressing a question there. But with that, if I was, thank you very much for the support. And we're going to move on to the next question.
Yes, my mind is starting to go quite a bit. So up next, we have, we're moving on to our live chat questions. Now, there goes my mind. But first up from the live chat, we have one from Orlos the Druid, who we haven't seen in quite a long time, who says, Enforcer, what will facilitate the liberation of Donbass and Crimea? What would have to happen?
What would facilitate the liberation of the Donbass and Crimea would be a Ukrainian push that broke through the heavily defended lines around the Donetsk and Luhansk republics, where they started to push around, well, that's getting into battle plans, but where they actually were able to break the lines and then push into Donetsk and Luhansk. So I think that would be the only way. There's also the chance of mutiny, where where those two little areas kind of just like butted Russian aid and also Russian control and started to fight against the Russians, and then the Ukrainians could come in the ensuing chaos between the Russian units and the DPR and LPR, and then just kind of, you know, bolster them and then push the Russians out. Those are the two options I'm seeing, and I hope that answers the question. And with that, because we're very pressed for time, we're going to move on to our last question of the night. It's going to be a live chat question, of course. We would do 3, but this stream has gone into marathon length, and I want to make sure that we, of course, can get Matthew to sleep if anyone needs sleep. So with that, we are going to move on to the last question. And who is the lucky last person who got in a question?
And the lucky last person of the night is John S., who says, Enforcer, how many hypersonic missiles have been used so far in this conflict?
Ooh, that's a tough one to assess. I don't actually have a number for that, and I think we can maybe Google it. How many missiles have been shot at Ukraine? On March, they had already fired 670. According to this figure, which was on May 11th, they fired 2,154. So I would assume right now it's probably around 3,000 to 4,000 or somewhere in that range. So I hope that gives a ballpark estimate to that question. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. This is the very end of the day 100 stream. 100 days ago, I sat in this very spot in my chair and rapped out the first few hours of the war on stream. We had absolutely no information back then to go off of, no markers. I got on Google Maps. We can actually go back to that stream and look at it, but due to time, we won't. Y'all can go back and click on that video if you would like and watch the end of it. But there was almost no information. This thing was protoplasmic in its form. Over 100 days, this channel has developed how it delivers this news. It's developed a format. We've gotten a waiting room with music, and we've grown a massive and wonderful community, and we've been able to get all kinds of support and funds to Ukraine and help out those people who deserve all the help in the world. It's been impressive to me and incredible to see that not only my channel has grown and developed over these 100 days, but also Ukraine has grown and developed over these 100 days. Ukraine kind of had a national identity before this war here in 2022, but now we see that they have united as a country, and they actually have an identifiable culture, and they actually believe themselves to be Ukrainians. And it's great to see that while this war, of course, is an unfortunate thing, that there are silver linings that come out of the billows of smoke from this war and Russian destruction on their homelands, and that the Ukrainians are, of course, forging a national identity. They're all rallying around their government, and they are pushing the Russians back and holding their ground and doing what Ukrainians do, which is, of course, being Ukrainians. So with that, that is the end of the stream. I thank you all so much for watching. If you did enjoy and you're a new viewer, I hope that you do like, comment, and subscribe, because we will be covering this war every single day except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the past 24 hours of the war of Ukraine from here until the last hour that this war goes on. And so with that, I thank you all once again. It has been a great honor to report this news to y'all, and I hope you all have a great night, stay safe, and take care. This was the Enforcer, and Slava Ukraini, Rom Slava.
Not